Before time had meaning, before sky or sea or sound, there was only stillness. Not the stillness of sleep or death, but something deeper, a silence vast enough to cradle all that would ever be. The Old Norse poets called it Ginnungagap, the yawning void. Neither light nor dark, neither warm nor cold. It was the space between possibilities. Within this endless emptiness, there were no stars, no breath, no form. Only potential, waiting patiently for its first spark. In that great expanse, the northern world slept unmade. To the south, there drifted the blazing realm of Muspelheim, where fires leapt and roared without shape or master. To the north lay Niflheim, a land of frost and mist, of shadowed rivers frozen in place. Between them stretched the gap, an infinite space that was neither realm nor element. There, in the slow meeting of opposites, creation began to dream itself into being. When the heat of Muspelheim met the icy breath of Niflheim, the first movement stirred within the void. Mist rose and condensed, forming droplets that glimmered like stars in the dark. From this quiet alchemy, the union of flame and frost life took its earliest shape. The poets said that the melting rime dripped with power, that it held within it the seed of all existence. In that moment, the world was not yet born, but the pattern of its becoming had begun. The Norse understood creation not as a single event, but as a balance, an eternal conversation between extremes. Fire and ice, order and chaos, warmth and cold, forever leaning toward one another. Their meeting in Ginnungagap was the first harmony, a reminder that even the smallest spark needs its shadow to be seen. From that balance, the first being emerged. It is said that Ymir, the progenitor of giants, took form as the mists thickened. He was neither god nor man, but something vast and elemental. His breath was the wind. His sweat became rivers. In his slow awakening, the stillness of Ginnungagap gave way to the pulse of life. Ymir fed from the milk of Audhumla, a cosmic cow formed from the same melting frost. From her body flowed nourishment, and from her licking of the salty ice emerged another, Buri, the ancestor of the gods. In this strange and quiet world, everything was both dream and substance. There was no sky above Ymir, no ground beneath him, only the endless mist. Yet within that mist, the foundations of the universe were gathering, the unseen roots of what would one day become earth, sea, and sky. The poets described it not as a storm of birth, but a slow unfolding, as if existence stretched, yawned, and gently opened its eyes. This idea that creation is not an explosion, but an awakening, reveals something deeply human in Norse thought. To them, the cosmos was alive, and every river, mountain, and star was part of that living whole. Even emptiness was sacred, for from it came all things. Ginnungagap was the breath before the first word, the pause before the first note of a song. In the quiet imagination of the North, such beginnings reflected the land itself. Long winters taught patience. The slow thaw of ice each spring brought renewal without haste. Creation, they believed, was not an act of violence, but of balance. In the stillness, warmth and cold met as equals, and the void became fertile. The sagas that would later speak of gods and wars were born from this serenity, from the belief that all life arises out of equilibrium. The great tree Yggdrasil, which would one day bind the worlds together, was already implicit in this first harmony. The frost did not destroy the flame did not consume the frost. Each defined the other, and together they made space for being itself. When the Norse poets told this story beside firelight, it was not simply myth, it was meditation. To imagine Ginnungagap was to imagine the quiet origin of all things, including oneself. Even the gods, who would later shape the cosmos, were descendants of this silence. Before Odin's wisdom, before Thor's thunder, there was the gap. Endless, still, waiting. From a modern eye, we might see in this myth a reflection of the natural world. The early peoples of Scandinavia lived between extremes, fierce winters and fleeting summers, icy fjords and volcanic mountains. They saw how life could spring from contrast, How thawing ice revealed green valleys, how darkness gave birth to dawn. Creation, for them, was always present, happening again each year as frost yielded to flame. So the story of Ginnungagap is more than a tale of beginnings. It is a remembrance that stillness is not emptiness, and that from balance arises beauty. In every meeting of opposites, heat and cold, silence and sound, life and death, the Norse saw a reflection of the first harmony. The world, like the void, was a space to be filled slowly, reverently, with the breath of life. As the mists thickened and the first shapes formed, the quiet of the void softened. Creation had begun to stir, but it had not yet spoken. The frost melted in gentle rivulets. The fire glowed softly across the unseen horizon. In that meeting, the pattern of existence found its rhythm, one that would echo through gods, men, and worlds yet to come. And so, from nothingness came balance. From silence, the whisper of becoming. In the endless space between flame and frost, the first heartbeat of the cosmos began its patient rhythm, slow, deliberate, eternal. As frost met flame, stillness gave way to movement, and from the melting heart of creation, life was born. From the meeting of fire and frost, the stillness of Ginnungagap began to shimmer with the pulse of creation. Out of the melting rime, shapes took form. Not yet gods, not yet mortals, but beings woven from the same forces that had awakened the void. In the slow rhythm of creation, the first lives began to move. Among them was Ymir, the ancestor of all giants, born from the mingling warmth of Muspelheim and the cold breath of Niflheim. He was vast beyond imagining, a living echo of the elements that shaped him. The old poems describe him as both man and mountain, his flesh like frozen earth, his breath like mist, his blood coursing with the primal waters of creation. Ymir was not crafted by hands, nor called forth by will. He simply was the first pulse of being in a silent universe. When he slept, he sweated life. From the moisture of his body, new beings formed. The Hermersr, frost giants who shared his wild, untamed essence. They were children of chaos and contrast, creatures of the edge between worlds. From their breath, the cold winds of the north began to blow. From their voices, the first echoes stirred across the empty gulf of Ginnungagap. But creation was not yet complete, for Ymir himself was sustained by another, the great cosmic cow, Ahumla. She, too, had formed from the melting frost, her body glimmering with purity and strength. From her udders flowed 4 rivers of milk, and from that nourishment Ymir drank deeply. Life fed upon life, and so the first cycle began. Audhumla herself found sustenance in the salt-rimed ice that surrounded her. As she licked the frozen surface, day by day, a new shape emerged. First hair, then a head, then a body. Thus was born Buri, radiant and strong, the first of the gods. Unlike Ymir, who was born from chaos, Buri came from the patient work of nurture, from warmth meeting ice, and the persistence of gentle action. From Buri would come Bor, his son, who would take as his wife Bestla, a daughter of the frost giants. From their union were born 3 sons, Odin, Vili, and Vi, beings who would one day bring order to the world. But for now, they were only the faint promise of a coming balance. The void still trembled with the power of giants, and the frost still ruled the edges of existence. These early stories of the Norse are less about conquest than about emergence. They speak of life finding shape in the interplay of forces, of heat and cold, chaos and care, strength and nourishment. Even the gods are not separate from this process. They are its flowering. Ymir and Audhumla represent 2 halves of creation, one raw and vast, the other gentle and sustaining. Ymir's presence filled the void, yet it was unshaped. His children multiplied, but they brought with them no order, only abundance. The frost giants, mighty and ancient, roamed without purpose. The world was alive, but it lacked direction. The poets describe this time as one of growing restlessness, as if creation itself longed for form, for meaning beyond mere existence. It is here that Odin and his brothers, born of both frost and divine light, stepped forward. In them, the Norse saw the blending of extremes, the strength of the giants and the clarity of the gods. They carried within their blood both chaos and purpose. In their eyes burned the will to shape, to give definition to what had until then been boundless. Yet before they could create, they would have to destroy. Ymir, the first being, was also the first boundary, the embodiment of the unformed world. His vastness left no room for anything new to grow. And so, the brothers rose against him. The old poems do not describe this act with cruelty, but with solemn necessity. Creation, they knew, often demands transformation. The death of Ymir was the price of a structured cosmos. When the brothers struck him down, his blood flowed in torrents, vast rivers that filled the void. His flesh became the land, his bones the mountains, his teeth the cliffs, his skull the dome of the sky. The sparks of Muspelheim were cast into that dome to become the stars. From his eyebrows, they built Midgard, the realm of men, a circle of protection against the chaos beyond. And from his brain they made the clouds that drift across the heavens. Thus, from one life came the world entire. Ymir's sacrifice, though violent in image, held a quiet truth that the Norse understood deeply, that all things are born from change, and that endings are simply another kind of beginning. From the formless came form. From the slain came the living. Even the gods owed their existence to the bones of what came before. When the poets spoke of this moment, they spoke not of vengeance or victory, but of transformation. The death of Ymir was a sacred act, the turning of chaos into cosmos. His body became the earth that men would one day walk upon, and his blood became the seas that would cradle their ships. The world, they believed, was built upon remembrance, upon the remnants of something ancient and vast. In this way, creation in Norse thought was not clean or sudden. It was layered, born of cycles of birth and dissolution. Every mountain was a memory, every ocean a trace of the first life that once filled the void. The gods themselves were descendants of both destruction and nurture, heirs to Ymir's strength and Audhumla's care. And so the cosmos took shape. The mists of Ginnungagap began to clear, revealing a world of contours and horizons. The sky curved above like a great skull, the seas shimmered with cold light, and in the still air hung the quiet breath of new creation. The brothers looked upon what they had made, not with pride, but with reverence. For they knew that in shaping the world, they had also inherited its responsibility. Through Ymir's end, the Norse saw the eternal rhythm of the universe, that life and death are not opposites, but partners. Each gives meaning to the other. The world that began in stillness had now found its heartbeat, steady, vast, and alive. The cosmos had taken its first form, yet it was far from complete. For though the gods had made the land and sky, there was as yet no sun, no moon, no stars to mark the passing of time. Light and order had not yet found their place in this new creation. That would come next, when the sons of Bor would turn their eyes to the heavens and awaken the rhythm of day and night. Between the realms of frost and flame, where could life take shelter? In the quiet after creation, the gods looked upon the world they had shaped from Ymir's vast remains. The seas still steamed with the heat of Muspelheim. The mountains gleamed like frozen bones. It was a realm of power and promise, yet fragile, unbalanced. The brothers Odin, Vili, and Vi felt the weight of their work. They had carved order from chaos, but order alone could not endure in the face of wildness. What they sought now was harmony, a middle world suspended between extremes. They named this place Midgard, the middle enclosure. It would be a refuge, a circle of safety within the boundless expanse of the cosmos. Around it stretched the cold and perilous lands of the giants, the Jotnar, beings older than the gods themselves. Beyond those borders lay the flaming edges of Muspelheim and the deep shadows of Niflheim. But within Midgard, there would be balance. The brothers raised its walls from Ymir's great eyebrows, vast barriers of living stone and spirit. These were not meant only as defenses but as boundaries between realms, the line where chaos paused and peace began. Within those walls, they shaped rivers from Ymir's veins and valleys from his hands. They filled the hollows with forests and fields, places where the wind could whisper softly instead of roaring in fury. In this calm cradle between creation's forces, the gods intended something new, a world where thought could grow, where curiosity might take root. For the first time, the vast energy of the cosmos began to still into form. The light softened, the seas calmed, the rhythm of the world slowed into a steady pulse, like a quiet heartbeat echoing beneath the sky. To give this realm light and motion, Odin set the sparks of Muspelheim in the heavens. Some became distant stars. Others, guided by divine hands, became the sun and moon. The sun, called Sol, was carried by a radiant maiden who steered her chariot across the sky each day, pursued endlessly by a wolf born of shadow. The moon, Mani, followed her path by night, keeping the balance between day and darkness. Thus began the cycle of time, a gentle weaving of light and shadow, life and rest. Beneath their glow, the brothers shaped the first winds and tides, the first songs of the world. The air began to move through the leaves of their new forests. Water found its way to the sea. The stillness of Ginnungagap was now filled with sound, the murmur of creation settling into rhythm. Midgard, in its making, was not a realm of perfection but of balance. The Norse saw it as a living borderland, the place where every force met its reflection. Fire was tempered by frost, light by shadow, gods by giants. The world was not a single harmony but a tapestry of opposites held in gentle tension. This, they believed, was what allowed life to endure. Odin walked among the mists of this newborn realm and listened. He heard the song of water against stone, the whisper of wind through young branches, the quiet breath of a world waiting to be filled. But something was missing. The land was beautiful yet empty, a stage without its players. The gods had built a dwelling, but not yet its inhabitants. Still, they paused before acting. The making of life would not be done lightly. The brothers understood that to breathe life into the world was to invite both wonder and sorrow. Yet it was the next natural step, the culmination of the balance they had sought. For what meaning would Midgard hold if it remained untouched by consciousness, unlit by the spark of thought? And so, in the soft light of a dawn that had no beginning, Odin and his brothers prepared for the final act of this first creation. They would walk the shores of the new world, where sea met sand and the wind whispered through driftwood, and there they would find two fallen trees. From these they would shape the first human beings, imbuing them with breath, warmth, and awareness. But for now, Midgard waited, quiet, enclosed, and perfect in its potential. The sun moved gently across the sky, its light glinting on waves that had never known a storm. The mountains stood in silence, their shadows stretching long across the empty plains. Above, the dome of Ymir's skull gleamed faintly with stars, each one a spark of the ancient fires that had birthed them all. The gods watched this world and felt a rare peace. For in Midgard, they saw not only the reflection of their labor but the promise of continuity. A bridge between realms, between divine and mortal, between chaos and calm. The Norse imagined it as the heart of the cosmos, the place from which all stories would one day unfold. In time, Midgard would become a realm of struggle and triumph, of fleeting lives and enduring memories. Yet in this moment, its moment of making, it was a poem of balance. Every element, every stone and wave and breeze, was born of both destruction and grace. As the walls of Midgard shimmered beneath the new sun, the gods turned their eyes to the horizon. Beyond the calm they had made, the world still rumbled with the power of giants and the shifting of realms. But within this sacred circle there was peace, if only for a while. As the light spread across the land, soft and golden, the gods looked upon their creation and saw that it was ready. Not yet complete, but waiting. Waiting for breath. Waiting for thought. Waiting for the first beings to open their eyes beneath its dawn. And so, the world stood poised on the threshold of awakening. As the world took form beneath their hands, the gods looked upon their creation and sought to fill it with life. What drives a god to sacrifice his eye for knowledge? In the calm dawn that followed the making of Midgard, the gods withdrew to a higher realm, Asgard, the shining home of the Aesir. Suspended above the middle world, it was a place of radiant halls and endless horizons, where gold gleamed softly against the clouds and the air was filled with quiet light. Here, the gods would dwell and watch over creation, shaping the fates of both men and themselves. But even among immortals, peace is never eternal. The Aesir, though divine, were beings of thought, of will, of desire. Their existence was not of endless perfection, but of purpose and struggle. In them lived the same yearning that would one day define humankind, the hunger to understand, to create, to seek meaning beyond mere survival. At the heart of this restless kin stood Odin, the All-Father. Born of Bor and Besla, grandson of the giant Buri, Odin carried within him the blended heritage of order and chaos. He was not a god of comfort or stillness, but of ceaseless search. The old verses describe him not seated upon a throne, but wandering, one-eyed and cloaked, traveling through the 9 realms in pursuit of hidden truths. Odin's eye was not lost in battle, but willingly given. At Mimir's well, a deep spring that shimmered with the knowledge of the cosmos, Odin sought understanding beyond the reach of words. The guardian of the well, the wise being Mimir, demanded a sacrifice, not in blood, but in sight. And so Odin plucked out one of his own eyes and dropped it into the depths. In that moment, the god of wisdom became half-blind, yet all-seeing. What he lost in vision, he gained in perception. The Norse did not see this as cruelty or madness, but as a reflection of truth, that wisdom always costs something, that insight is born from loss. Through Odin's act, knowledge became sacred, not a gift, but a quest. And in that quest lay the foundation of all that would follow. From Asgard, Odin ruled alongside Frigg, his queen and companion, who knew the threads of fate but kept her silence. Where Odin sought truth through journey and sacrifice, Frigg embodied the quiet wisdom of foresight, the understanding that some knowledge must remain unspoken. Their union reflected the dual paths of learning, one through seeking, one through acceptance. Around them gathered the divine family of the Aesir, each a force of nature, yet bound by duty and kinship. There was Thor, son of Odin and the earth goddess Jr., whose hammer Mjolnir was the protector of gods and men. He was strength given form, a thunderous yet loyal presence who stood as guardian of order against the chaos that lurked beyond the world's edges. Where Odin's wisdom was subtle and shadowed, Thor's was honest and unyielding, the calm certainty of purpose. There was also Baldur, radiant and pure, beloved of all who beheld him. In his presence, the halls of Asgard seemed brighter, the air gentler. To the Norse, Baldur represented the ideal of light and innocence, fragile yet profoundly moving. His story, still distant in time, would one day become the turning point of all things. Among the Aesir were others too, Tyr, the brave, who would later give his hand for the binding of chaos. Heimdall, the ever-watchful guardian of the Rainbow Bridge, Bifrost, whose horn would one day sound the end of the world, and Bragi, the poet god, whose words carried memory across ages. Together, they formed the fabric of divine life, each thread distinct yet woven into a single pattern, the order of the gods. Asgard itself was a reflection of their nature. The golden hall Valaskjaf with its high seat Hliskjolf was Odin's throne, from which he could gaze across all realms. Bilskirnir, Thor's home, stretched vast and sturdy, a fortress of thunder and stone. The hall of Valaskjaf shone beside the gardens of Idun, where apples of immortality grew, a reminder that even gods required renewal. Yet beneath all this grandeur lay the quiet awareness that nothing, not even divinity, lasts forever. The Norse gods were not beyond fate. They lived under it. Even as they built and ruled, they knew that the threads of destiny were already being woven, that one day even Asgard's golden walls would tremble. This sense of impermanence was not a cause for despair but a call to mindfulness. In the Norse world, the gods themselves embodied the paradox of existence. Mighty and fragile, wise yet ever learning, eternal yet doomed. Their stories were not of flawless perfection, but of striving, of finding meaning in a cosmos that offered no guarantees. Odin's search for wisdom was not a quest for power, but for understanding the balance of all things. He learned from giants and spirits, from the dead and the living, from the runes carved into the roots of the world tree Yggdrasil. Through his journeys, he began to see that knowledge was not an end, but a bridge, connecting all beings, from God to man, through the shared mystery of existence. And so the age of the Aesir unfolded, not in thunder or conquest, but in reflection. The gods became mirrors of human longing, their divine struggles echoes of mortal fears and hopes. In their halls of light, they watched over Midgard, guarding its fragile harmony. Yet even in their splendor, they sensed the coming of shadows, forces stirring in the deep places of the world. For beyond Asgard's shining walls, the Jotnar still moved in the mists, ancient and proud, bound neither by law nor by peace. And among them would rise figures who would test the gods' wisdom, their patience, and their very destiny. But for now, Asgard stood bright beneath the endless sky, its walls gleaming, its halls filled with the quiet hum of creation fulfilled. Odin's eye, resting in the dark waters of Mimir's well, saw all that was and all that might be. In that reflection shimmered the essence of the Norse cosmos, that knowledge and sacrifice, strength and fragility, were never separate, but always intertwined. As Odin hung upon the tree of worlds, knowledge flowed through his sacrifice, and the roots of destiny deepened. How many worlds can grow upon a single tree? At the heart of the Norse cosmos stood Yggdrasil, the great ash whose vast roots and sweeping branches connected all realms of existence. Its trunk rose through the heavens, its roots sank deep into the underworld, and its boughs stretched beyond the sight of gods and men alike. Yggdrasil was not merely a tree. It was the spine of the universe, a living framework that held together the fragile web of life, death, and destiny. From its crown, an eagle watched silently, its gaze encompassing the breadth of Asgard and beyond. Between its eyes perched a subtle hawk named Vedrfolnir, who observed the currents of fate and whispered their quiet truths. High among these branches, light filtered softly, like morning sun through misted leaves, touching every hall and river below. Here, the Aesir could contemplate the full measure of the worlds they tended, each realm shimmering in fragile balance. Beneath Yggdrasil's great trunk, its roots delved into the waters of Hvergelmir, a primordial spring from which rivers flowed to every corner of the cosmos. Here dwelled Nhggr, the serpent who gnawed at the roots of the tree. Yet even in its destructive work, Nhggr was not evil in the mortal sense, but part of the eternal cycle. Decay that nurtured growth, endings that made space for beginnings. The Norse understood that balance depended on both creation and dissolution, and Yggdrasil embodied that truth in its living form. Across its branches, countless creatures made their home. The squirrel Ratatoskr, carrying messages and provocations between eagle and serpent, tracing the lines of communication that connected heaven and underworld. Each movement along the tree was a gentle reminder that the universe is alive, that even small acts echo across realms. The rustle of leaves, the sweep of the eagle's wings, the hiss of Nhggr in the roots, all became part of a subtle harmony, a cosmic rhythm that resonated through every plane. Yggdrasil's branches sheltered Asgard, home of the Aesir, from which the gods observed Midgard, the human world. The tree's shadow fell across the plains, forests, and seas below, linking humanity to the divine in quiet symmetry. And while Midgard was the world of men, Yggdrasil's roots also extended to Hel, the shadowed realm of the dead, and Jotunheim, the wild land of the giants. Through these connections, the cosmos remained whole, a single organism in which every realm influenced the others, every life intertwined. The poets described Yggdrasil as both awe-inspiring and serene. Its vastness inspired humility, while its endurance offered comfort. Here was a symbol of permanence amid change, of order amid chaos. Standing beneath its trunk, one might feel the slow pulse of time itself, the heartbeat of a world in constant transformation. Each leaf, each ripple along its roots, spoke of continuity, of cycles that never cease, and of life that persists even in the shadow of mortality. At the base of the tree, the three Norns Urd, Verdandi, and Skuld tended the waters of destiny. They wove the fates of gods and men alike, carving the threads of past, present, and future into the root-soaked soil. Theirs was a quiet labor, patient and steady, yet it reached through all worlds. As Ratatoskr scuttled between them and the eagle above, the interconnection of all things became tangible. A single tree, countless lives, and an eternal rhythm that neither god nor giant could escape. Yggdrasil was not static. It breathed with the universe, expanding and contracting in the slow cycles of cosmic time. Storms ruffled its branches, winters hardened its bark, and yet it endured. A bridge between beginnings and endings, a sacred conduit for the flow of life. The tree was a mirror for human understanding, a reflection of balance in all things. Even the threats that gnawed at it or flew above it were part of its quiet, eternal lesson. Growth requires challenge, and beauty is inseparable from impermanence. Through Yggdrasil, the Norse envisioned the cosmos as a single living being, where every realm, every creature, and every life was part of a shared design. The eagle above and the serpent below, the gods in their halls, and the humans in the earth below, all were threads in the same tapestry. Time moved along its branches like wind through leaves, and destiny flowed through its roots like water in secret rivers. As the branches stretched across the cosmos, life itself began to unfold in countless forms. The tree held the worlds in gentle balance, offering stability without restraint, freedom without chaos. It stood as a testament to endurance, to interconnection, and to the quiet, unending rhythm of the universe. And beneath its sheltering limbs, the story of gods, men, and all beings began to take root, each life a reflection of the vast, patient pulse of Yggdrasil itself. When the gods breathed upon wood, what awakened within the stillness? After shaping Midgard and tending Yggdrasil, Odin and his brothers Vili and Ve turned their attention to the quiet shores of the New World. There, washed by gentle waves and strewn with driftwood, they found the raw materials of life waiting in patient silence. 2 pieces of timber caught their eyes, smooth from the currents and shaped by time and tide. From them they would craft the first humans, Ask and Embla. The creation of these figures was not hurried. The brothers worked with care, carving the forms with reverence for the life they were about to awaken. Odin bestowed upon them spirit, the inner breath that would animate their bodies. Vili granted mind and understanding, the spark of awareness that would allow them to perceive the world. Ve added sensory perception and speech, the faculties that would connect them to each other, to the gods, and to the earth itself. In this quiet, deliberate act, the Norse imagined the essence of humanity. Awareness born from divine attention, life breathed into form, and the capacity to know, to feel, and to act within the balance of the world. Ask and Embla were more than shapes. They were the first conscious beings, standing between chaos and order, with the freedom to move, to grow, and to reflect. The brothers watched as the figures stirred, the wood fibers softening and stretching as the divine gifts took hold. Breath filled their lungs. Hearts began to beat in synchrony with the rhythm of the earth. Eyes opened to the sky, to the light of soul, and to the shadow of Mani. In that first quiet moment, the world held its breath with them, waiting as awareness unfolded for the very first time. Ask and Embla stood upon the shores of Midgard, their feet touching the sands shaped by Ymir's remains. Around them, the rivers flowed, the forests whispered, and the wind carried the scent of salt and pine. They were alone, yet surrounded by the gentle vigilance of the gods, who had provided both structure and freedom. The balance of the universe, between life and death, light and shadow, god and giant, now included a new thread, humanity. The Norse viewed this creation not as a conquest of the earth, but as an awakening. In Ask and Embla, consciousness itself was honored, given the opportunity to learn, to choose, and to grow. They were the first witnesses to the beauty and fragility of the cosmos, tasked with walking the world that the gods had so carefully shaped. Yet their existence was not imposed. It was a gift, and within it lay responsibility. Through them, the Norse explored the quiet power of awareness. Ask and Embla could perceive the cycles of seasons, the movement of the sun and moon, the whisper of Yggdrasil's branches, and the distant call of creatures in Midgard and beyond. Their senses were attuned to the rhythm of the cosmos, and their minds capable of reflection. The gods had not only created bodies, but also the capacity for wonder, the essential human ability to notice, to question, and to imagine. In these first humans, the sacred interplay of elements was complete. The strength of giants, the wisdom of gods, and the nurturance of creation all found echo in their forms. Through Ask and Embla, the balance of Yggdrasil, the vigilance of the Aesir, and the harmony of Midgard became accessible to mortal eyes. Life, previously a distant force, now had a vessel, one that could learn, change, and remember. Odin, Vili, and Ve stepped back, observing the first humans with quiet satisfaction. They had given more than flesh and breath. They had given the potential to participate in the ongoing story of the worlds. With each heartbeat, Ask and Embla became partners in the unfolding cosmos, inheritors of a delicate equilibrium that required care, respect, and awareness. As the sun rose over Midgard, casting golden light across rivers and forests, the first humans took their tentative steps. Their senses tuned to the world, their minds open to the vastness around them. They were vulnerable yet endowed with possibility, aware yet unburdened by the weight of history. In their quiet awakening, the gods saw not only the beginning of human life but the promise of thought, reflection, and story. Ask and Embla's birth marked more than a point in time. It was the dawn of consciousness within the carefully balanced cosmos. The world now had witnesses, learners, and participants, beings capable of engaging with the harmony and tension of existence. The breath that Odin gave them was also a reminder. Life requires presence, observation, and care. Life now walked beneath the sky, and with it, the stories of gods and mortals began. What does paradise look like to those who will one day face doom? High above Midgard, suspended among clouds and light, lay Asgard, the dwelling of the Aesir. It was a realm of calm radiance, where golden halls gleamed softly beneath the endless sky, and the air carried a subtle warmth, even as the winds of distant realms whispered through the ether. Time in Asgard moved with a measured rhythm, deliberate and serene, as if the very stones and beams had learned patience from the cosmos itself. At the heart of Asgard rose Valhalla, the great hall of Odin, where the roofs were radiant with gold and the echoes of quiet valor resonated through its corridors. Though it was often imagined in later tales as a place of battle and heroism, its early conception was one of order and reflection. A sanctuary where the gods could witness the unfolding of the worlds below and contemplate their place within the balance of creation. Here, each god had purpose, each act and thought woven into the careful symmetry of existence. The great rainbow bridge, Bifrost, arched gracefully from Asgard toward Midgard, a shimmering thread of light connecting heaven and earth. Travelers crossing it felt a soft warmth underfoot and glimpsed the worlds below in fleeting reflection. It was both pathway and boundary, a reminder that the realms, though interconnected, were distinct, each with its own laws and rhythm. Through Bifrost, the gods maintained their vigilance, observing humanity, the giants, and the hidden corners of creation with steady curiosity. Odin, seated upon Hliskjolf, the high throne of Valhalla, could see all that moved across the 9 realms. Yet even in this vantage, he was restless. Knowledge and understanding were never complete. The currents of fate shifted beyond even divine sight. The calm of Asgard was a counterbalance to this restlessness, a place where reflection and foresight nurtured both power and wisdom. In these halls, decisions were made not in haste, but in quiet deliberation, mindful of the intricate web connecting all worlds. Frigg, Odin's queen, walked the quiet corridors, contemplating the threads of fate and the lives that would unfold in Midgard. She moved with the soft assurance of one who sees beyond the moment, whose understanding of time and consequence extends like the roots of Yggdrasil itself. Her presence, gentle yet resolute, lent Asgard its serenity. She reminded the Aesir that even in power, restraint and foresight are essential, and that the beauty of paradise is as much in measured order as it is in grandeur. Thor, meanwhile, patrolled the outer halls and the approaches to Bifrost, his presence a grounding force within the luminous serenity. Though his strength was formidable, his role was not to dominate, but to maintain balance, to ensure that the harmony of Asgard endured amid the flux of distant realms. Even his hammer, Mjolnir, while a weapon of immense power, was also a symbol of protection and continuity, a steady heartbeat echoing through the golden corridors. In Asgard, time was marked by subtle rituals rather than urgency. Meals were shared in quiet communion, conversation flowed with patience, and the sound of laughter mingled with reflection. Each god's role, though distinct, was part of the larger pattern. A reminder that paradise is not the absence of struggle, but the presence of understanding, order, and intentionality. Even in the calm of Asgard, there was acknowledgement of impermanence. The gods knew that the serenity of their halls could not last indefinitely. Beyond their gates lay Jotunheim, realm of giants and untamed forces, and beyond that, the vast unknown of Niflheim and Muspelheim. The balance they maintained was a fragile one, and Asgard itself was a moment of equilibrium, luminous, intentional, and fleeting in the broader sweep of fate. Visitors to Asgard might have been struck by its paradox. It was a sanctuary filled with vigilance, a palace of light aware of the shadows, a home of eternal beings conscious of time's inevitability. Each step along its golden floors, each glance along the glimmering arches of Valhalla, carried the quiet reminder that paradise exists not apart from life's uncertainties, but in harmony with them. And so, Asgard stood calm, luminous, and poised above the worlds it oversaw. It was a realm of order, reflection, and quiet majesty, where gods moved with measured grace and purpose. Here, within its golden halls and across its radiant bridges, the Aesir nurtured understanding, preparing not only for the governance of the worlds below but for the trials that would one day test even their immortal endurance. Beyond its shimmering gates lay worlds both wondrous and wild, waiting to be explored, understood, and connected through the branches of Yggdrasil. Where does the line between order and wildness blur? Beneath the golden heights of Asgard lay Midgard, the realm of humanity, a delicate circle of life nestled between gods and giants. Here, the rivers flowed gently through forests and valleys, seas lapped calmly against shores, and the wind carried whispers of both growth and memory. Midgard was the world of men, the space where life learned to walk, to speak, and to reflect. It was a world defined by balance, cultivated by human hands, yet always subject to the rhythms of nature and the unseen powers that moved beyond its borders. Yet beyond the edges of this carefully shaped domain lay Jotunheim, the land of giants. Its mountains rose jagged and formidable, its forests thick with shadowed trees, and its rivers ran swift and untamed. Here, the giants roamed, beings born from Ymir's frost and chaos, embodiments of the wild forces that still lingered beyond the gods' order. To the Norse, the giants were not simply adversaries. They were the mirror of nature itself, immense, unpredictable, and unconstrained. They reflected the very essence of creation that had been left untamed, reminding humans and gods alike that control was always provisional. Midgard's boundaries, though guarded by the vigilance of Thor and the watchful eyes of the Aesir, were never absolute. The bridge between worlds was subtle, a shift in the wind, a ripple in a river, or the quiet approach of mist rolling from Jotunheim's frozen highlands. Humans lived within a space of potential danger and possibility, where the unknown could enter at any moment. And yet, this tension was not feared in the same way as it might be in later tales. It was acknowledged calmly, as a part of life's rhythm. Civilization thrives not in isolation, but in the dynamic interplay with forces beyond its control. The giants of Jotunheim embodied that principle. They were neither wholly malevolent nor benign. They were the expression of nature in its purest, most unshaped form. Mountains, storms, and rivers could be as dangerous as the largest of the frost giants, and just as majestic. The Norse imagined their interactions with humanity and gods as necessary, a reminder that balance is preserved not by domination, but by understanding and coexistence. Even conflict, when it came, was part of the natural order, a way of reinforcing limits and teaching respect. Within Midgard, humans cultivated the land, built dwellings, and carved paths through the forests. They tamed the rivers, domesticated animals, and learned the cycles of seasons. Yet all of this took place beneath the shadow of greater forces, the giants, the storms, and the slow, inexorable sweep of time. Midgard was a fragile achievement, a realm of order delicately maintained, a space where consciousness and environment met in quiet dialogue. Humans, like the gods, were participants in the ongoing balance, called to adapt, reflect, and live with awareness of the worlds beyond their own. Jotunheim, in contrast, moved with a rhythm entirely its own. Its peaks pierced clouds, its winds howled across valleys, and its rivers could turn violent without warning. Life there was resilient, fierce, and self-determining. The giants, shaped from Ymir's first body, were reminders of both the power and unpredictability inherent in all existence. For the Aesir, they were teachers of humility. For humans, distant reflections of the raw forces that shaped their lives. The interplay between Midgard and Jotunheim was a meditation on duality. Order and chaos, cultivation and wildness, limitation and freedom. Even the edges of these realms carried quiet lessons. Forests that grew between Midgard and Jotunheim were neither fully tamed nor entirely wild, serving as thresholds where the two forces met. Here, one could sense the pulse of the giant world, the latent strength that still lingered beneath the surface of structured life. Storms might arise, rivers might swell, and yet, from the tension of these encounters, the human world learned resilience, patience, and the subtleties of balance. In this interplay, the Norse found meaning. The gods and humans, though creators and caretakers, were never separate from the wilderness. They were observers and participants, always reminded that life's beauty and fragility stemmed from its coexistence with untamed forces. The giant's presence was not a threat to fear alone, but a quiet mirror reflecting what remained vast and unknowable, calling humans to humility and reflection. Through these realms, the Norse imagined the cosmos as a space of relationships rather than absolute control. Midgard and Jotunheim, though distinct, were interwoven. One nurtured and sheltered, the other challenged and provoked. Each existed in conversation with the other, teaching that stability requires awareness, and that growth depends upon the presence of forces beyond comprehension. Beyond the frost and flame, other realms stirred in silence. What if death was not an end, but another stillness? Beneath the roots of Yggdrasil, where the great world tree sank into shadowed waters, lay Hel, the realm of the dead. It was a place removed from sunlight and warmth, yet not cruel or fearsome in its essence. Here, the souls of those who had passed wandered quietly, neither tormented nor restless, but enveloped in a calm, reflective space. Hell was a domain of acceptance, a necessary counterpoint to the vibrancy of Midgard and the brilliance of Asgard. The gate to Hel was watched over by its namesake, Hel, daughter of Loki, whose presence was neither malevolent nor comforting, but steady, a guide through the transition from life to quiet repose. Her face, half fair and half shadowed, reflected the duality of existence. Light and dark, presence and absence, awareness and surrender. Those who entered Hel found themselves embraced by a stillness that invited reflection, an understanding that life, in all its motion, was only one part of the greater cycle. Within the shadowed halls and quiet glades of Hel, the dead moved with soft rhythm. Rivers traced silent paths, and the faint murmur of unseen winds stirred the underworld's leaves. Here, time did not press forward in urgency, but flowed gently, measured by the slow pulse of the tree above. In this space, the Norse envisioned death not as punishment, but as continuation, a shift in perspective, a passage into a deeper layer of the cosmos. Beyond hell itself lay other shadowed realms, corners of existence shaped by the quiet forces of dissolution. Some held spirits who lingered between worlds, while others housed ancient powers that had not found form in the living planes. These domains were not chaotic but precise in their order, a mirror to the structure of life and the vigilance of the gods. Even in darkness there was balance. In the Norse understanding, death was intertwined with life, a reminder that all beginnings carry endings, and all endings give rise to new perspectives. Hell and her domain offered a reflective pause, allowing the living and the dead to coexist in the greater tapestry of existence. Through these shadowed realms, the Norse contemplated impermanence, continuity, and the quiet dignity inherent in the cycle of existence. The souls who entered hell were neither trapped nor forgotten. They were witnesses to the universe's slow unfolding. The calm of the underworld provided space to understand the patterns of life, the rhythms of the gods, and the interconnection of all realms. Here, memory and reflection lingered like soft light filtered through dense foliage, suggesting that endings are never absolute, but simply transformations in the ongoing story of the cosmos. Even the giants and creatures of distant realms respected hell's stillness. They did not intrude nor disturb its order, for the domain of the dead was sacred, a quiet counterbalance to the action and vigor of Midgard, Jotunheim, and Asgard. In its calm, the Norse recognized a truth. Mortality, shadow, and loss are integral to the rhythm of life, and wisdom often arises from the gentle acceptance of what cannot be controlled. And so, within the shadowed halls and revered glades of hell, the cosmos maintained its balance. The great tree above connected heaven, earth, and underworld, allowing the pulse of life to flow seamlessly into quietude. In this interwoven structure, every ending became a part of the whole, every soul a thread in the slow, deliberate weaving of fate. And so, between life and silence, fate continued its slow weaving. In the quiet pulse of the world tree, could one hear eternity breathe? At the center of the cosmos, Yggdrasil rose like a living axis, binding all realms in a gentle, enduring rhythm. Its trunk soared from the shadowed depths of hell to the golden heights of Asgard, while its vast branches stretched over Midgard and the untamed lands of Jotunheim. Each leaf, each root, each subtle sway of its limbs carried the slow cadence of existence, a rhythm that reflected both the fragility and resilience of the worlds it supported. Yggdrasil was more than structure. It was harmony embodied. Within its roots and boughs, order and chaos met in a constant, quiet dialogue. The eagle at its crown watched over the heavens, while NHGGR gnawed at the roots below. Their tension was not destructive alone, but necessary. A reminder that stability arises from balance, and that life's continuity depends on the interplay of opposing forces. Every gust of wind, every ripple through its roots, was a note in a cosmic symphony, subtle yet indispensable. The Norse saw in Yggdrasil a reflection of the delicate interconnection of all things. The realms it held, Asgard, Midgard, Jotunheim, Hel, and the others, were not separate worlds, but living extensions of one another. Each influenced the next, every action and decision echoing along branches and through roots. A storm in Jotunheim, a human's choice in Midgard, even the faintest breath of a god in Asgard, all moved the tree in gentle response. It was a universe alive, attentive, and patient. Through its vast limbs passed the quiet messengers of fate. Ratatoskr, the nimble squirrel, traveled tirelessly between eagle and serpent, carrying not just words but the subtle currents of connection that maintained the tree's equilibrium. The Norns tended the waters at the roots, weaving past, present, and future into the soil itself. Every thread of existence was observed and nurtured, reminding all beings that life's order depends on both vigilance and acceptance. Yggdrasil's harmony was not a static perfection, but a living process. Seasons shifted across Midgard, storms swept through Jotunheim, and the light of Sol and Mani danced across leaves and rivers. Each change was a part of the tree's rhythm, an unfolding of balance that embraced both renewal and decay. The tree absorbed, reflected, and mediated the energies of all realms, sustaining a quiet stability amid perpetual motion. Even the gods recognized the tree's significance. Odin contemplated its branches from Hliskjolf, understanding that wisdom arises not from dominance, but from awareness of interconnection. Thor patrolled its edges, sensing the pulse of protection and power flowing through each root. The Aesir knew that their vigilance alone could not preserve the worlds. It was Yggdrasil itself, alive and attentive, that harmonized the forces of existence, granting space for growth, reflection, and life to unfold. Yggdrasil was a mirror for human understanding as well. Mortals, aware of the tree through stories and reverence, learned the quiet lessons of patience, balance, and coexistence. The universe, vast and intricate, required not only strength but mindfulness, not only ambition but acceptance. The tree whispered, in the rhythm of its sway and the rustle of its leaves, that all things, creation and dissolution, joy and sorrow, life and death, were threads in the same enduring pattern. Yet Yggdrasil's calm was not absolute. It bore the weight of possibility and fate, the subtle tremors of future upheavals, and the pressures of forces both known and unseen. Its roots and branches, though steady, reflected the awareness that balance is never guaranteed, that even the most harmonious systems must adapt to the inevitable turning of time. In its quiet pulse, the tree offered a meditation on continuity. It held the worlds with patience, responded to the rhythms of life and death, and embraced the interplay of light and shadow. Yggdrasil was the steady heart of the Norse cosmos, a living bridge connecting realms, guiding destiny, and offering a model for reflection upon the intricate web of existence. Yet even the calmest worlds tremble when destiny begins to turn. What if even the gods had to learn the art of peace? As the worlds settled into their forms, the divine kin themselves faced challenges beyond mere creation. The Aesir, rulers of Asgard, and the Vanir, guardians of fertility, growth, and the natural world from Vanaheim, found their paths crossing in tension. The Aesir, focused on order, strategy, and governance, often struggled to comprehend the flowing, life-giving rhythms of the Vanir. The Vanir, attuned to nature's cycles, found the Aesir's rigid vigilance constraining. Though both sought the flourishing of existence, their methods and priorities diverged, and thus arose the first divine conflict, a war not of destruction, but of misunderstanding and negotiation. The battlefield, though imagined with divine intensity, carried no mortal horror. Instead, it was a space of measured challenge. Spells, contests, and tests of strength and wisdom unfolded beneath the skies of the realms. Thunder rolled through Asgard's halls as Thor measured his might, while Njord called upon the winds and waves of the seas, demonstrating the Vanir's intimate connection to the living world. Every clash, every exchange, was a conversation of power, a gentle probing of limits, and a calibration of purpose between two cosmic families. Amid the skirmishes, the gods learned restraint. The conflict was not won by force alone, but by understanding. It became clear that neither party could dominate without destabilizing the balance of the cosmos. And so, a truce was forged, a conscious decision to exchange hostages and wisdom rather than continue a war that might ripple harm through all realms. This act of diplomacy was unprecedented, signaling that even divinity thrives not merely through strength, but through reflection, respect, and collaboration. From this truce, bonds were created. Njord, the god of the seas and winds, traveled to Asgard, bringing the Vanir's calm and adaptability to the halls of the Aesir. His children, Freya, goddess of love, fertility, and magic, and Freyr, god of prosperity and growth, joined the divine pantheon, enriching it with the rhythms of nature and the subtle currents of life. Their presence reminded the Aesir that true strength encompasses understanding as well as power, that harmony requires both vigilance and compassion. This blending of divine families shaped the future of Asgard. Rituals and festivals began to honor both cycles of nature and the measured order of the gods. Council chambers echoed not just with strategic deliberation, but with wisdom of growth, harvest, and renewal. The halls, once solely echoing the strategies of war and governance, now reflected the interplay of creation and cultivation, of authority tempered with patience. The Aesir and Vanir, once rivals, became complementary. Their stories illustrate that conflict is not a disruption to avoid entirely, but a space for insight and growth. Even gods must navigate misunderstandings, adapt to differences, and seek the balance between their strengths and those of others. This lesson, gently embedded in the myth, resonates as a quiet reflection of human experience. That unity often emerges not through avoidance, but through dialogue and mutual respect. Through these early exchanges, the cosmos itself benefited. Midgard flourished under the watch of gods who now appreciated the value of both order and abundance. The forests, rivers, and seas, domains long shaped by Vanir influence, thrived alongside human settlements cultivated under Aesir vigilance. Asgard, too, grew richer, its halls and gardens reflecting a more complete understanding of life, from the disciplined architecture of its towers to the subtle growth of its orchards and streams. Peace between Aesir and Vanir was not static. It was an ongoing practice, requiring observation, care, and continuous engagement. The gods' ability to learn from each other, to accept differences, and to weave their powers together became a cornerstone of their enduring influence. Through these exchanges, the first lessons of diplomacy, compromise, and balance entered the divine consciousness, setting a precedent for all subsequent interactions between gods, humans, and giants alike. From truce grew trust, and from trust, the many halls of Asgard came alive with divine purpose. The cosmos now had a model of harmony, a gentle demonstration that strength is most enduring when paired with understanding, and that even the mightiest beings grow through cooperation rather than domination. The first conflicts between Aesir and Vanir were not the end of strife, but the beginning of wisdom, an enduring example of balance within the pulse of the worlds. What peace lies in a paradise that knows its end? In the wake of truce and the blending of divine kin, Asgard entered a tranquil era often called its Golden Age. The great halls of the Aesir rose in harmonious splendor, each reflecting both purpose and beauty. Valhalla, Odin's hall, gleamed with roofs of gold and towers that caught the sunlight as if to store it for eternity. Here, the echoes of quiet contemplation mingled with the soft sounds of preparation. Weapons polished, feasts arranged, and the gentle cadence of ritual observances marking time with deliberate grace. Nearby lay Folkvanger, the domain of Freya, where the verdant fields stretched under the mellow light of the sun, and meadows rippled with soft wind. Here, the goddess of love and fertility nurtured the balance of life, weaving her care into the land itself. Mortals' fates, guided by her insight, were touched not by harsh judgment but by attention to the cycles of growth, renewal, and reflection. Even in the halls of immortals, one could sense the quiet pulse of nature's rhythm, reminding all that life's order depends on attention, care, and harmony. Across the horizon, Gladsheim rose, a space of council and assembly, where the gods gathered to deliberate the subtle movements of the cosmos. Its halls were vast but welcoming, echoing with the measured voices of beings who understood both power and restraint. Here, the Aesir and Vanir alike exchanged observations, forecasts, and reflections, not in haste, but with the patience that only immortality can afford. Decisions were reached through thoughtful dialogue, each considered not only for immediate consequence, but for the flow of worlds and the balance of life across the 9 realms. The Golden Age was not one of idle indulgence, yet it carried a calmness rare in tales of gods. Feasts were abundant, and mead flowed freely, yet even laughter was tempered by reflection. The immortals walked among their creations, the rivers of Midgard, the forests of Jotunheim, and the quiet expanses of hell, aware of the intricate web that bound all existence. In this age, the harmony of the cosmos seemed tangible, each realm moving in concert like the instruments of an unseen orchestra, conducted by the patient hands of the Aesir. Craftsmen and smiths labored in distant forges, the rhythmic hammering of metal echoing across the halls like a heartbeat. Weapons and treasures were made not solely for war, but as offerings to the balance of the universe. Hammers to protect, spears to maintain order, and jewels to honor the intricate patterns of creation. Even these acts of craft were meditative, each strike a note in the ongoing symphony of life, each object a manifestation of care, skill, and foresight. Prophecy, too, lingered as a quiet shadow in this golden age. Odin, perched upon Hliskjolf, observed the unfolding of time and the subtle signs of future events. Though the Aesir enjoyed a period of calm, they were never blind to destiny's eventual turn. The foresight they possessed did not bring fear, but understanding, a gentle awareness that even paradise is fleeting, and that awareness itself is a gift. In this way, the Golden Age became both celebration and meditation, a moment of order and beauty set against the inevitability of change. The gods themselves embodied this balance. Thor walked the outer halls, ensuring protection and stability, yet he also paused to enjoy the soft music of wind and water, the laughter of companions, and the serene rhythm of life unfolding. Freya wandered through the meadows, attuning herself to growth and subtlety, nurturing both mortal and immortal connections. Odin guided with quiet vigilance, attentive to patterns and currents that stretched far beyond Asgard. Each action, each gesture, contributed to the harmony of the Golden Age, reinforcing the delicate equilibrium of existence. Visitors wandering through the halls at dusk would have felt the calm radiance of this era. Light glimmered across golden surfaces, soft shadows stretched along polished floors, and the faint hum of conversation carried through arches and corridors. Even as the gods prepared for what was to come, there was a profound serenity, a stillness that allowed reflection on the beauty of impermanence, the gentle rhythm of life, and the fleeting, luminous moments of grace that make existence memorable. In this age, Asgard was alive with the quiet interplay of creation and reflection, vigilance and ease, celebration and foresight. Every hall, field, and hall of council reflected the careful attention of beings who understood the fragility and power of their domain. The Golden Age was a meditation in motion, a reminder that even in power, serenity can be cultivated, and that harmony is found not in ignoring change, but in living attentively within it. But even as the mead flowed freely, the threads of destiny began to tighten. Can creation exist without the hand of chaos? Into the ordered halls of Asgard came Loki, the shapeshifter, neither fully friend nor foe, but a presence that would forever alter the rhythm of the divine household. His arrival was subtle, like a ripple across a still pond, yet it carried a quiet insistence that nothing, not even the luminous calm of Valhalla or the tranquil fields of Folkvanger, could remain entirely unchanged. Loki's charm was immediate. His wit, sharp and glinting, drew attention without force, and his smile often hinted at possibilities both delightful and unsettling. Loki was a reflection of nature's unpredictability. Like the sudden turn of wind across Midgard's plains, or a winter thaw that shifts the river's course, he embodied the truth that life is never entirely fixed. Yet this presence was not inherently malicious. His cleverness brought gifts and insights just as often as it stirred tension. Through subtle pranks, riddles, and challenges, he encouraged reflection, adaptability, and ingenuity among the gods. In his duality lay a profound lesson, that change and disruption are woven into the fabric of existence, and that the calmest moments can be enriched by the occasional flicker of uncertainty. Within Asgard, Loki's interactions were as varied as they were unpredictable. He might assist Thor in a task requiring cunning rather than strength, or advise Odin in unraveling a puzzle that demanded insight beyond the obvious. Yet in the same breath, he could provoke mild chaos, testing boundaries and revealing the limits of the gods' foresight. Each act, whether amusing or vexing, served a subtle purpose, reminding immortals that even in paradise, vigilance and flexibility are necessary. Loki's presence was also a mirror for reflection. He challenged assumptions and expectations, prompting the Aesir and Vanir to see beyond their habitual patterns. Freya observed his clever manipulations with curiosity rather than ire, recognizing that his interventions, however disruptive, could reveal hidden opportunities or truths. Thor, though often exasperated, learned patience and strategy, refining his strength with awareness of subtlety. Even Odin, seated in contemplation upon Hliskjolf, acknowledged that the trickster's cleverness illuminated aspects of the cosmos that wisdom alone could not uncover. Shape-shifting was Loki's signature, yet it was more than mere spectacle. He moved fluidly between forms, from a bird to a salmon, a mare to a man, each transformation a lesson in adaptability. In these changes, the gods witnessed that form and circumstance are never fixed, and that perception and response must evolve with the currents of life. This fluidity echoed the natural rhythms of the worlds themselves, the shifting tides of Midgard, the flowing rivers of Jotunheim, and even the slow, inevitable decay within Hel. Loki's dual nature also reminded the gods of mortality and consequence. Though immortal themselves, they observed that cleverness untempered by responsibility could ripple outward with effects unforeseen. The trickster embodied the paradox of creation, that innovation and disruption coexist, that gifts may carry hidden cost, and that foresight alone cannot prevent all imbalance. In his quiet provocations, the Aesir and Vanir practiced discernment, learning to navigate change without succumbing to fear or rigid control. Through stories of Loki, the Norse conveyed subtle truths about the balance of the universe. Chaos is not separate from order, nor harm separate from benefit. Both arise from the same currents of being. Loki's cleverness and mischief were thus not merely narrative devices, but philosophical reflections. Life, like the cosmos, thrives when the predictable and unpredictable move together in measured interplay. His presence affirmed that equilibrium is not stasis, but the dance of opposing forces, a calm coexistence of light and shadow, stability and transformation. Even as Loki entertained, provoked, and shifted shape among the gods, his impact on Asgard's golden age was gentle rather than catastrophic. The halls of Valhalla and Gladsheim remained luminous, the orchards of Folkvanger continued to flourish, and the rhythms of ritual and council persisted. Yet subtle tensions appeared, a flicker in the firelight, a ripple in conversation, a challenge in laughter, and with these, the gods learned anew the importance of vigilance, creativity, and flexibility. As the trickster smiled in the firelight, the calm of Asgard began to flicker. What truth is worth the price of an eye, or 9 nights upon the world tree? Odin, the All-Father, moved with quiet determination across the cosmos, a figure both commanding and contemplative. His quest was not for conquest or power, but for understanding, a deep, enduring knowledge that would illuminate the patterns of existence. In the serene shadow of Mimir's well, he made the profound choice to surrender his eye, a gesture of trust and humility, exchanging a fragment of himself for a fragment of the universe's secret rhythm. The sacrifice was not a moment of agony, but a stillness pregnant with meaning. A deliberate pause, a silent acknowledgement that wisdom often comes through letting go. From this act, Odin's journey unfolded with gentle gravity. He hung upon Yggdrasil, the world tree, for 9 nights and days, suspended between earth, heavens, and underworld. Alone with the winds and the subtle pulse of the tree, he embraced a stillness that was both fragile and infinite. Through deprivation and quiet reflection, he became attuned to the hidden currents of the cosmos. The runes, symbols of language, magic, and fate, revealing the delicate interplay of forces that shaped all realms. The narrative here is one of endurance, patience, and attentiveness, a meditation on how insight arises from immersion in life's deeper layers. The runes themselves were more than tools or spells. They were a language of the universe, etched into the very essence of being. Each mark represented principles of balance, transformation, and the natural cycles connecting gods, humans, and giants. As Odin perceived these symbols, he saw not only the future but the mechanisms of the present, the ways in which choice, consequence, and intention interweave in subtle patterns. The wisdom he gained was not loud or celebratory. It was a quiet illumination, a soft light that revealed the structure beneath apparent randomness. Through this process, Odin's presence became a bridge for the worlds. His understanding of the runes allowed him to guide humanity and the divine alike with clarity tempered by compassion. Advice, prophecy, and instruction flowed from him as gentle currents, rather than imperatives enforced with fear. Mortals who glimpsed the fruits of his wisdom felt not coercion, but invitation, an encouragement to learn, reflect, and align themselves with the quiet rhythms of life. The significance of Odin's quest extended beyond personal enlightenment. It became a model of deliberate engagement with fate, a reminder that knowledge requires patience and surrender, not haste. The gods themselves observed and respected this journey, understanding that even immortals must experience limitation, struggle, and reflection to perceive the deeper truths of existence. In this way, wisdom was framed as a living practice, a cycle of inquiry, observation, and internalization, a calm, unfolding path rather than a destination. As Odin hung upon the tree, he became aware of the subtle harmonies that connect all things. The wind through the branches, the whisper of leaves, the faint movements of roots beneath the soil, each pulse carried meaning. The boundaries between realms seemed less rigid, past, present, and future intertwined like threads in the great tapestry of Yggdrasil. This expanded awareness allowed him to perceive the flow of fate not as an unchangeable decree, but as a dynamic pattern, responsive to attention, intention, and understanding. Even in solitude, Odin's journey was not lonely. The world tree itself seemed alive, a gentle presence supporting his endurance. The murmurs of unseen creatures, the distant movement of rivers and clouds across Midgard, and the soft currents of the unseen realms contributed to the rhythm of reflection. In these quiet interactions, he discovered that knowledge arises not merely from observation, but from immersion, from listening deeply to the subtle voices of the cosmos. Odin's sacrifice and vigil were also a meditation on impermanence. One eye, the comfort of gravity, the certainty of time. All were surrendered willingly, replaced by the insight that endures beyond physical presence. This truth, like the runes themselves, carries lessons for all who reflect upon it. Clarity, patience, and the humility to recognize that the world is larger than oneself. Wisdom emerges not through domination or haste, but through surrender, awareness, and careful attunement to patterns both seen and unseen. From the silence beneath the tree, knowledge spread like ripples across the realms. It infused the Aesir's councils, guided the Vanir's cycles, and touched Midgard with subtle insight. The quiet acquisition of understanding became a touchstone for divine and mortal alike, a gentle reminder that enduring truth is found not in urgency or force, but in calm reflection, patience, and the willingness to suspend oneself between worlds until clarity arrives. Odin descended from Yggdrasil carrying the runes, not as trophies of conquest, but as instruments of harmony, a gift of understanding to guide life, fate, and the intricate dance of all realms. If fate is woven by unseen hands, can even the gods escape their thread? At the base of Yggdrasil, where roots sink into the depths of the cosmos, the Norns Urd, Verdandi, and Skuld tend the flow of destiny. These three sisters, embodiments of past, present, and future, carve the patterns of existence into the waters, soil, and wood of the great tree. Their movements are deliberate, quiet, and precise, a calm choreography that ensures the continuity of life and the orderly unfolding of time. Fate, in their hands, is not punishment, but a living pattern, a rhythm that carries all beings through cycles of growth, challenge, and renewal. Each Norn has her domain. Urd traces what has been, recording history and the consequences of choices that shaped the present. Verdandi attends to the present, observing the delicate balance of actions and responses, ensuring that each moment connects seamlessly to the next. Skuld gazes toward what is yet to come, perceiving possibilities and probabilities with impartial clarity. Together, they maintain a tapestry of existence that is neither rigid nor chaotic, but harmonious, a reflection of the natural order inherent in all realms. The runes Odin discovered are closely intertwined with the work of the Norns. Each symbol carries layers of meaning, corresponding to forces that govern life, nature, and thought. By understanding them, the gods and mortals who learn their lessons can navigate existence with awareness, aligning their actions with the currents of destiny rather than resisting them. The runes are not tools to control fate, but instruments to perceive its pattern, fostering harmony with the cosmic rhythm rather than fear of its inevitability. Through the gentle observation of the Norns, the Norse envisioned destiny as a river, flowing, responsive, and inevitable, yet alive with subtle variation. Even the Aesir, in their power and wisdom, are threads within this river. Odin himself, though All-Father, recognizes that knowledge allows guidance but does not grant absolute control. Thor's strength, Freya's fertility, Loki's cleverness, all operate within the weave of the Norns' careful hands, contributing to the balance that sustains the 9 realms. Yet fate, while structured, is never entirely fixed. The sisters' weaving allows for nuance, for adaptation, for quiet defiance that respects the integrity of the whole. In their calm, deliberate movements, one sees the acknowledgement that life thrives when constraints are understood, not feared. Mortals may strive, gods may act, and chaos may ripple through the worlds, but all are absorbed into the tapestry with a rhythm that honors continuity and connection. The Norns themselves are embodiments of reflection. Observers seated at the still heart of Yggdrasil, they remind all beings that past actions inform present choice, and present actions shape the future. In this meditation, time is not linear oppression, but a flowing conversation among moments. Ord, Verdandi, and Skuld are neither judgmental nor indifferent. They are patient witnesses to the unfolding story, gently guiding its continuity, ensuring that even disruption contributes to balance. Through this lens, fate is not to be feared. It is the natural pulse of existence, echoing the patterns found in Midgard's forests, Jotunheim's rivers, and Hel's quiet halls. Just as the wind bends branches without breaking them, destiny flows through lives, shaping, influencing, yet always maintaining the overarching integrity of the cosmos. In understanding this, mortals and gods alike learn a profound calm, to act with awareness, to reflect upon consequences, and to embrace the rhythm of the worlds. The subtle interactions between the Norns' weaving and the runes also illustrate the unity of all realms. Symbols etched by Odin's insight correspond to currents maintained by the sisters, bridging knowledge, action, and consequence. This interconnection reveals a vision of the cosmos as a living system, where awareness and engagement can align with fate without resisting it. Destiny is thus both guide and companion, a quiet river beneath the visible world, moving all things toward their place in the eternal pattern. And yet, in the heart of fate's still waters, ripples of defiance began to rise. What knowledge lies in silence, and what power in love unspoken? While Odin sought understanding through sacrifice and endurance, the quiet strength of the goddesses offered a complementary form of wisdom. Frigg, his consort and the matron of Asgard, possessed the gift of foresight. She perceived countless threads of possible futures, yet rarely spoke them aloud. In her silence was a calm authority, a recognition that knowledge is most powerful when measured, observed, and shared with discretion. Her quiet guidance shaped the actions of the Aesir, influencing decisions through gentle counsel, subtle interventions, and patient observation rather than overt command. Frigg's presence embodied the idea that awareness need not be loud to be profound. She understood that the future is woven delicately, that even the smallest choice can ripple across the realms. In her chambers, she moved with serene purpose, attending to both gods and mortals with intuitive insight. Her wisdom reminded the Aesir that reflection, patience, and observation are as necessary to cosmic order as strength and courage. In the calm of her gaze, one could sense the deliberate rhythm of fate, neither rigid nor arbitrary, but alive and flowing. Alongside Frigg, Freya embodied the emotional and spiritual dimensions of existence. She guided love, fertility, and loss, nurturing bonds that span gods and humans alike. Her influence extended to the fallen warriors, whose spirits she received with gentle care, balancing life and death with compassion. Freya's teachings emphasized the cycles of attachment and release, showing that emotional depth and empathy are essential to the harmony of all realms. Her quiet power reflected the interconnectedness of living beings and the subtle currents of desire, longing, and devotion that shape both mortal and divine experience. Together, Frigg and Freya created a calm equilibrium within Asgard. While Odin's pursuit of knowledge reached outward and upward, the goddesses provided grounding, a reflective balance that nurtured patience, intuition, and compassion. Their influence ensured that the quest for wisdom was tempered by empathy, that understanding of the cosmos included not only logic and strategy, but also sensitivity to the hearts and lives entwined within its vast structure. The calm power of the goddesses reminded all that strength without care risks imbalance, and that insight without compassion leaves the world incomplete. Frigg's foresight often intersected subtly with Odin's endeavors. Though she spoke sparingly, her counsel guided his decisions in ways that shaped the harmony of Asgard and Midgard alike. Similarly, Freya's attention to love and loss created a bridge between the mortal and divine, reminding the gods that the currents of human emotion are integral to the rhythm of the realms. Their wisdom was gentle yet pervasive, shaping actions without forcing them, allowing the Aesir to grow in awareness, patience, and depth. In the unfolding story of the Nine Realms, the balance between knowledge and intuition, strength and empathy, becomes essential. The calm presence of Frigg and Freya illustrates that wisdom is not one-dimensional. It requires understanding the world intellectually and emotionally, observing without controlling, guiding without imposing. Their influence is subtle, often unseen, yet it resonates through the decisions, relationships, and patterns that define life in both the divine and mortal spheres. Through Frigg's foresight, the gods were reminded of the weight and subtlety of choice. Through Freya's compassion, they were reminded that actions carry emotional resonance beyond immediate consequence. Together, their presence nurtured a holistic understanding of existence. That life, like the weaving of fate by the Norns, thrives when awareness and empathy coexist, when strength is balanced by reflection, and when love and patience guide the currents of action. As Asgard's halls glimmered with the calm rhythms of the Golden Age, the influence of these goddesses extended quietly into the worlds below. Mortals, observing patterns of divine care, mirrored aspects of this wisdom in their own lives. Farmers tended their fields with patience, families nurtured bonds with care, and communities understood the subtle consequences of their choices. Through reflection, compassion, and attentive action, humanity began to echo the order and balance cultivated by the goddesses in Asgard. As the gods learned wisdom, humanity began to mirror their order in the world below. What did faith sound like in the whisper of wind across the fjords? As the divine threads of Asgard extended outward, life in Midgard, the realm of humankind, began its own quiet unfolding. Early Norse communities were shaped by the rhythm of the land and sea, by the rise and fall of tides, the changing of seasons, and the patient cycles of sowing and harvest. Villages nestled among fjords and forests, their wooden longhouses rising against the chill northern winds, offering shelter and warmth in a landscape both beautiful and demanding. Here, every act of daily life was quietly entwined with reverence, each gesture a reflection of faith in the gods who had shaped the cosmos. The people of Midgard navigated a world of contrasts. The abundance of summer fields against the starkness of winter snows, the bounty of fishing rivers against the challenge of storm-tossed seas. Men and women alike moved with intention, their labor a form of devotion. Fields were plowed in rhythm with the earth, and crops were gathered with gratitude for the cycles that sustained them. The sea, both provider and adversary, demanded respect and skill. Seafarers learned to read the currents, winds, and stars, their voyages guided by quiet observation and ancestral knowledge. Life was a meditation on adaptation, endurance, and attentiveness. Faith threaded through every moment of this human experience. Norse beliefs were woven into domestic rituals, seasonal celebrations, and the naming of children. Offerings might be left at small shrines, rivers, or grove-like sacred spaces, not in fear but in acknowledgement of the unseen forces that shaped daily life. Each gesture, tending a hearth, mending a sail, or preparing a feast, became an act that harmonized human effort with divine order. In this quiet observance, the sacred and the ordinary coexisted seamlessly, forming a gentle rhythm of respect, gratitude, and reflection. Honor, too, was central to this age. Social bonds were maintained with care, measured in acts of generosity, courage, and fairness. Villagers navigated disputes with deliberation, resolving conflicts in ways that upheld the cohesion of the community while honoring the unseen eyes of the gods. Feasts and storytelling provided not just nourishment and entertainment, but also guidance, as lessons of morality, bravery, and compassion were passed from one generation to the next. These narratives, rich with the deeds of gods and heroes, grounded daily life in a framework of meaning and continuity. The physical environment of Midgard shaped perception and practice. Forests offered wood for shelter and fuel, rivers supplied fish, and mountains provided protection and resources. Villagers understood the subtle patterns of animal behavior, weather, and growth, attuning themselves to a landscape alive with quiet intelligence. Even in harsh seasons, the people observed and respected these rhythms, aligning their actions with the cycles of nature rather than resisting them. In doing so, they participated in the enduring balance that the gods themselves maintained in higher realms. Daily life was also punctuated by moments of reflection and wonder. Children played near streams that reflected the changing sky. Elders spoke in measured tones of past deeds and lessons, and artisans labored in calm concentration to craft tools, clothing, and vessels. Music, song, and ritual intertwined, offering expression and continuity, linking generations and the living world to the patterns of the divine. Every aspect of human existence, from labor to leisure, echoed the greater order of the cosmos, reminding mortals of their place within a living universe. Through these quiet practices, humanity absorbed the stories and presence of the gods. They saw in lightning and storms the power of Thor, in the fertility of the fields the care of Freya, and in the subtle unfolding of destiny the guidance of the Norns. Myth and daily life were inseparable, each informing the other in a calm, reflective cycle. Human labor became sacred, observation became prayer, and living with awareness became a meditation on the interconnectedness of all things. As men looked to the sky for guidance, they began to tell stories of gods who once walked among them. These narratives, shared by hearth and hall, grounded the spiritual in the tangible, ensuring that the wisdom of the divine resonated through the quiet cadence of human life. The age of men had begun, a time of labor, reflection, and devotion, where daily acts became pathways to understanding, and the sacred quietly infused the ordinary. How did the turning of seasons become a prayer? In the villages and longhouses of Midgard, the cycle of the year was both calendar and devotion. Each season carried its own rhythm, and the rituals of the Norse people were gentle acknowledgments of the patterns that shaped life. The blots, or sacrificial offerings, were conducted with calm reverence, not in fear, but in recognition of the forces that nurtured the land, the seas, and human survival. Livestock, grains, or crafted goods might be offered at small shrines or sacred groves, their presentation a gesture of gratitude and continuity, a quiet conversation with the divine that reflected both dependence and respect. Winter solstice brought particular attention. In the longest nights, villagers gathered around firelit halls, their torches casting flickering shadows upon walls of wood and stone. Mead flowed slowly, laughter and song filling the spaces, yet always tempered with reflection. The solstice was a moment to honor the returning sun, to acknowledge endurance through darkness, and to offer prayers for warmth, life, and protection. Even the silence of snow-laden nights became sacred, a canvas for contemplation and remembrance, connecting the human heart with the vast cycles that surround it. Spring and summer carried their own rituals of renewal. Seeds were sown with intent, each handful of earth a silent vow to nurture life. Offerings at rivers or streams accompanied planting, invoking the care of Njord for fertility and abundance. The first harvests were met with celebration, feasts that intertwined sustenance and gratitude, where music, stories, and communal bonds reinforced the interconnectedness of humans, land, and divine guidance. These moments were not hurried or forceful. They were deliberate, serene acknowledgments of natural rhythm, observed with mindfulness and shared presence. Even rites of passage reflected the gentle pulse of Norse life. Naming ceremonies, marriages, and memorials were conducted with calm formality, each a recognition of change, continuity, and the role of the divine in human experience. Children were welcomed with blessings, adults were honored for contributions to the community, and the dead were remembered with care, their spirits entrusted to Freya, Odin, or the Norns as the family observed tradition and cosmic order. In all cases, rituals served as both connection and reflection, a quiet dialogue that reaffirmed life's place within the larger framework of existence. Torches and hearth fires punctuated these ceremonies, creating warmth against the cold northern air and offering a focal point for contemplation. Smoke spiraled gently into the sky, carrying prayers, intentions, and gratitude to realms beyond. The crackle of flames, the soft murmur of voices, and the rhythmic pouring of mead were meditative, echoing the flowing currents of time itself. Community, nature, and faith intertwined seamlessly, each reinforcing the others in a calm, deliberate harmony. Through these shared rituals, humans maintained awareness of cycles beyond immediate perception. The turning of the seasons became more than a passage of time. It became a reflection of cosmic order, a living meditation on change, continuity, and interconnection. Villagers learned to move with the land, to observe the patterns of weather, plant, and animal life, and to attune themselves to rhythms that extended beyond their own lifetimes. In this alignment, daily life and ritual merged, producing a sustained sense of balance and serenity. Sacred spaces, groves, streams, hilltops, provided quiet sanctuaries for contemplation. Here, offerings could be left, prayers whispered, or songs sung in soft unison. The natural world itself became a temple. The rustle of leaves, the murmur of rivers, and the gentle sway of branches all framed human activity as part of a larger dialogue with the divine. Ritual was thus a bridge, linking mortal awareness with the enduring forces of gods, ancestors, and nature. Music and storytelling accompanied the seasons, reinforcing memory and teaching. Tales of Odin, Thor, Freya, and the Norns were recited or sung during communal gatherings, illustrating principles of courage, wisdom, compassion, and attentiveness. In the gentle cadence of these narratives, history and myth intertwined, guiding human behavior, inspiring reflection, and cultivating a subtle harmony between inner life and outer action. Through the rhythm of worship, a deeper bond grew between God's land and the human heart. Faith was not a distant doctrine but a lived practice, manifest in daily attention, seasonal observance, and communal care. It anchored communities to the cycles of the natural world, providing structure, comfort, and continuity, while gently reminding individuals of their place in the expansive web of life. In this way, ritual and devotion became a quiet meditation, a serene thread connecting mortal existence to the enduring pulse of the cosmos. What does it mean to live with honor when even gods can fall? In the quiet villages and coastal settlements of Midgard, the Norse cultivated a code of conduct that shaped both daily life and the response to extraordinary trials. This code of honor, or drengskapur, was less about glory or conquest than about integrity, loyalty, and the calm strength of character. Men and women measured themselves by how they treated kin, neighbors, and the wider community, striving to act with dignity even amidst hardship, storms, or the unpredictability of fate. Honor was not imposed. It was observed, absorbed, and reflected in the subtle rhythms of everyday life. Kinship formed the core of this moral fabric. Families, extended households, and allied clans maintained bonds through acts of trust, mutual support, and measured judgment. Elders guided the young with stories and counsel, teaching that strength alone does not define character. Patience, fairness, and compassion are equally vital. In moments of tension, whether resolving disputes or facing external threats, the ideal of honor called for reflection before action, ensuring that responses preserved the cohesion and welfare of the community. Loyalty extended beyond family. Warriors upheld promises to comrades, neighbors tended to shared fields, and leaders bore the responsibility of stewardship with awareness of the consequences for all under their care. Courage was measured not by reckless display, but by steady endurance in the face of challenge, a quiet fortitude that balanced action with thought. In this way, Drengskaper became a framework for living thoughtfully within the natural and social order, a steady compass amidst uncertainty. Even in conflict, the emphasis remained calm and principled. Disputes were often settled through measured discussion, rituals of arbitration, or carefully negotiated duels, spaces where courage and judgment intertwined. Violence was not glorified for its own sake. It was tempered by purpose, guided by ethics, and constrained by the collective values of the community. Honor was expressed in restraint as much as in action, reinforcing the idea that dignity resides not only in what one does, but in how one chooses to act. The ideals of honor also extended to interactions with the divine. Mortals recognized that gods and Norns alike respected integrity and reflection. Offerings, prayers, and observances were conducted with sincerity rather than ostentation, embodying awareness of one's place within the larger weave of existence. By living with attention to both human and cosmic order, people mirrored the balance they observed in Asgard, creating a subtle harmony between earthly deeds and the overarching rhythms of fate. Storytelling and song preserved these values across generations. Heroes were celebrated not merely for feats of strength, but for their commitment to principles, their steadfastness under pressure, and their care for kin and community. Tales of bravery were intertwined with lessons in prudence, empathy, and moral discernment. Listening to these narratives became a quiet form of reflection, allowing both young and old to internalize the subtleties of honor, courage, and ethical action in the world around them. Even the ordinary rhythms of life, tending flocks, navigating seas, repairing homes, or sharing meals, became opportunities to practice Drengskaper. Observing these small, consistent acts of responsibility and kindness revealed that honor is not the product of dramatic moments alone, but emerges in the sustained commitment to integrity, loyalty, and care. Each gesture, no matter how simple, contributed to the moral fabric of the community and reflected a connection to the divine patterns observed in higher realms. As human hearts mirrored divine patterns, the stories of heroes began. Tales of individuals whose calm courage, measured judgment, and steadfast loyalty guided their communities across seasons, storms, and challenges took root in memory and song. These narratives intertwined moral reflection with narrative rhythm, reinforcing the value of quiet dignity and the enduring strength of honor as a guiding principle in the human world. What treasure can outshine the peace of a clear heart? In the quiet folds of ancient valleys and along the shadowed curves of northern rivers, the story of Sigurd unfolds, a tale of courage, destiny, and measured reflection. Born to a line of heroes yet shaped by the currents of fate, Sigurd's path led him to the lair of Fafnir, the dragon who had transformed from man to monstrous guardian of gold. The legend, often told with the roar of battle, can also be understood as a meditation on resolve, perception, and the delicate interplay between ambition and wisdom. Sigurd approached the dragon with a calm focus, his mind attuned not only to the threat before him, but also to the meaning of his task. Fafnir's vast coils shimmered in the dim light of the cavern, scales like molten bronze, eyes glimmering with suspicion and guarded knowledge. The gold he protected whispered in the silence, not with temptation alone, but with lessons about greed, power, and the impermanence of wealth. The narrative emphasizes discernment over violence. The hero must move with awareness, courage tempered by thought, understanding that every action resonates far beyond the immediate moment. The slaying of Fafnir, therefore, is not merely an act of might, but a calm confrontation with the natural and moral order. Sigurd perceives the dragon's danger and his own role within fate's weave. Each step is deliberate, each motion measured, reflecting the integration of skill, intuition, and the guidance of the runes that Odin revealed long before. In this framing, the tale becomes a reflection on the harmony between courage and insight, between personal action and the larger currents of destiny. Upon victory, the whispers of gold reveal another layer of understanding. The treasure is not solely material. It carries the curse of greed, a reminder that desire unchecked can unravel even the wisest of hearts. Sigurd listens, absorbs, and reflects, embodying the quiet strength that distinguishes true heroism. The ability to engage fully with challenge, yet remain attentive to the moral and spiritual implications of one's choices. The hoard becomes a mirror, showing both opportunity and risk, reward and responsibility. This meditation extends to the human experience itself. Sigurd's journey suggests that courage is not the absence of fear, nor is heroism measured only in dramatic feats. True valor arises from calm discernment, the capacity to act with purpose, and the wisdom to perceive the consequences of one's actions. In the stillness of thought before motion, in the reflective pause amidst uncertainty, the mind becomes as vital a tool as any sword. Alongside personal courage, Sigurd's story illustrates the interplay of fate and agency. The dragon's lair, the treasure, and the lurking dangers are all woven into the larger tapestry of destiny. Yet his decisions, careful, attentive, and morally grounded, shape the outcome. The saga, when recounted softly, encourages contemplation of the balance between the inevitability of circumstance and the deliberate choices that define character. Each moment of action resonates within the broader pattern, offering insight into how intention and awareness guide both human and heroic life. The narrative's calm perspective also invites reflection on impermanence. Fafnir's gold, no matter how radiant, is transient. The dragon itself, transformed by desire, illustrates the costs of obsession. Sigurd, by moving with insight and measured courage, demonstrates that understanding, restraint, and reflection yield treasures far more enduring than wealth alone. This quiet lens emphasizes inner clarity and moral focus as the true hallmarks of heroism. Through Sigurd's meditation, listeners encounter a story not of spectacle, but of timeless human lessons. Courage paired with reflection, action guided by wisdom, and the recognition that external achievement gains meaning only when tempered by ethical awareness. The hero's journey becomes a mirror for those who reflect upon their own paths, showing how bravery and discernment, when balanced, create harmony within both personal and communal life. Beyond Sigurd's fire, new destinies began to stir. Is the truest hero the one who greets his fate without fear? The story of Beowulf, though often associated with distant lands and early English tradition, resonates closely with Norse sensibilities of courage, honor, and calm reflection. In the mead halls and shadowed fens of his world, he embodies a quiet valor, a steadfast acceptance of life's impermanence and the dignity found in facing one's end with composure. Unlike tales of reckless heroism, Beowulf's journey is measured, deliberate, and attentive to both moral and cosmic order. From the first steps into Heorot, the great hall of Hrothgar, Beowulf demonstrates courage tempered by awareness. The threat of Grendel, the shadowed force of chaos, challenges not only his strength but his capacity for calm judgment. Each movement, each decision, reflects the northern ideal. Courage is not loud or brash, but mindful, rooted in the integrity of one's character. In confronting danger, Beowulf maintains balance between action and reflection, showing that true heroism is inseparable from discernment. Even in his later battles, including the final confrontation with the dragon that marks the end of his life, Beowulf meets fate with acceptance rather than resistance. He understands that mortality is inevitable, that the cycles of life and death are woven into the fabric of existence by forces beyond control. This perspective mirrors the teachings of the Norns and the philosophical calm of the Aesir, acknowledging destiny, preparing with care, and embracing the moment with measured courage. In this, the hero achieves a form of serenity, a quiet strength that transcends physical triumph. Beowulf's dignity extends beyond personal deeds. His loyalty to kin, people, and lord reflects the moral fabric of the northern world, echoing the Norse ideal of drengskapur. Valor is intertwined with responsibility, protecting the weak, preserving social bonds, and sustaining honor in all endeavors. Death is neither feared nor ignored. It is observed as the natural conclusion of a life lived with purpose, a final act in the continuous rhythm that links mortal and divine realms. The story also emphasizes the subtle interplay between individual action and communal memory. Beowulf's deeds inspire reflection among those who witness them, encouraging courage, integrity, and careful consideration of moral consequence. His calm resolve becomes a model for understanding how humans can navigate danger and uncertainty while maintaining ethical awareness. In this sense, heroism is as much about the quiet cultivation of virtue as it is about confrontation or victory. Beowulf's narrative, told with gentle cadence, illuminates the Norse view of life as a balance between action and reflection, bravery and humility, mortality and legacy. The dragon he faces is both literal and symbolic, a final challenge that tests not just strength, but wisdom, composure, and acceptance of inevitability. His peaceful courage becomes a meditation for listeners, illustrating that the measure of a hero lies in the integration of skill, foresight, and ethical clarity, rather than in spectacle or conquest alone. Even the end of Beowulf's life carries dignity. Surrounded by companions and remembered in song, his passing reflects the northern reverence for the cycles of existence, that even in death, virtue, courage, and moral clarity endure in memory and narrative. His legacy exemplifies the serene heroism valued in Norse culture. A calm confrontation with fate, a life of steady integrity, and the quiet strength of facing the inevitable with composure. Even the greatest among mortals must yield to time's slow turning. In every hero's heart, do the gods remember themselves? Across the realms of Midgard and Asgard, a subtle reflection persists. The deeds of human heroes echo the struggles, virtues, and dilemmas of the gods themselves. The quiet courage of Sigurd, the composed bravery of Beowulf, and the steadfast loyalty of countless unnamed warriors reveal patterns that mirror divine experience. In facing danger, loss, and the inevitability of death, mortals enact lessons that the gods embody in higher realms, creating a calm, contemplative resonance between the earthly and the celestial. Human heroism, in this view, is less about spectacle than about measured engagement with the forces of life. Every challenge faced by mortals, be it a storm-tossed voyage, a rival clan, or the symbolic dragon of fear and desire, reflects the eternal tension between order and chaos that governs all existence. As Odin sacrifices for knowledge or Thor wields Mjolnir to maintain cosmic balance, so humans exercise courage, foresight, and moral discernment in their limited yet meaningful spheres. Through these parallels, the stories of men and gods intertwine, creating a narrative tapestry that celebrates reflection alongside action. Heroes also mirror divine inevitabilities. Mortals, though constrained by lifespan, encounter the same rhythms of fate, honor, and consequence that the gods navigate across time. When a warrior approaches a final battle, there is an awareness, conscious or intuitive, that the outcome is both shaped by choice and guided by forces beyond control. This understanding mirrors the calm acknowledgement by deities that all actions ripple through the interconnected realms. Human courage thus becomes a quiet meditation on the interplay of agency and destiny, reflecting the structure and wisdom of the divine cosmos. The moral and emotional dimensions of heroism further strengthen this mirroring. Acts of loyalty, compassion, and reflection among humans echo the guidance offered by Frigg, Freya, and the Aesir. In helping neighbors, honoring kin, or resolving disputes with thoughtfulness, mortals enact virtues that the gods exemplify, creating a living bridge between divine principle and human behavior. The subtlety of these reflections reinforces the Norse understanding that greatness is measured not only by deeds of strength but by the quality of judgment, the depth of empathy, and the steadiness of character. Even in the quiet moments between action, the reflection persists. A hero resting beneath a tree, observing the flight of birds, or contemplating the flow of a river participates in the same contemplative rhythm that permeates divine life. These still intervals allow reflection, introspection, and alignment with the larger pattern of existence. They serve as reminders that heroism is continuous, not confined to singular moments of drama, and that the calm exercise of virtue is as significant as any climactic victory. The stories of human and divine heroes also share the inevitability of loss and transformation. Just as gods confront prophecies of Ragnarok, mortals face aging, the passing of loved ones, and the impermanence of achievements. By witnessing human courage tempered by reflection and ethical awareness, the mythic narratives illustrate that acknowledgement of mortality enhances, rather than diminishes heroism. Mortals become living mirrors of divine poise, navigating the delicate balance between action and acceptance, strength and understanding. Through this lens, the myths of men and gods converge into a meditative pattern. Heroes are not isolated figures but reflections of universal principles, demonstrating that courage, integrity, and foresight are qualities shared across realms. Their stories invite contemplation. How individual action aligns with larger rhythms, how moral and emotional awareness shapes behavior, and how the quiet courage of a single heart resonates within the broader web of existence. And as mortals dreamed of glory, the gods prepared for twilight. What happens when even the sun grows tired? Long before the final battles of Ragnarok, the world begins to whisper signs of its approaching twilight. The Fimbulwinter, an endless winter of cold and shadow, sweeps across the lands. Snow drifts over forests and fjords, rivers stiffen beneath ice, and the wind carries a stillness that seems to reach even into the hearts of men and gods. The sun itself appears diminished, casting pale light across the frozen plains, and the rhythm of seasons falters. This quiet, pervasive cold is both a literal and symbolic harbinger, a slow, inevitable unfolding that reminds all creatures of impermanence. In villages of Midgard, humans feel the deepening shadow in the shortening days. Livelihoods strain under frozen soil, livestock struggle for sustenance, and the long nights encourage reflection and caution. People look to the sky, observing unusual comets or the dimming of familiar stars, interpreting these subtle signs through stories passed by elders. Even in fear, their attention is meditative, acknowledging forces greater than themselves, aware that the world has rhythms beyond human control. The gods, too, perceive the shifting patterns. Odin studies the omens, listening to the whisper of the winds and the counsel of the Norns. The air carries portents, the unraveling of boundaries between realms, the stirring of giants in distant lands, and tremors across the earth that hint at fractures yet to come. Each sign is observed with calm understanding, for prophecy in Norse thought is not meant to incite panic, but to guide preparation and reflection. Knowledge of the future is a quiet weight, shaping decisions and intentions, tempering action with foresight. As the frost deepens, the natural world seems to hold its breath. Forests lie under still blankets of snow, lakes reflect the muted light of a reluctant sun, and the call of birds is scarce and distant. Even beasts retreat to hidden dens, attuned to the subtle changes in air and season. In these quiet observations, the narrative evokes a haunting calm. The inevitability of transformation does not need violence to be profound. Its presence can be felt in silence, shadow, and the slow pulse of a world poised on the edge of change. Among the Aesir, subtle unrest stirs. Loki's influence, long a whisper at the edges of Asgard, grows as ancient oaths and unresolved tensions awaken. Giants and other beings of chaos sense the shifting balance, emerging from hidden places, readying for the conflicts foretold. Yet even in these movements, the tone remains meditative rather than frenzied. The cosmos itself moves with inevitable rhythm, and the gods prepare with measured thought rather than reckless haste. Mortals, observing the signs, feel the same quiet tension. Fears and hopes intertwine, as communities rely on ritual, reflection, and communal care to navigate hardship. Offerings are made to maintain favor, songs are sung to preserve memory and courage, and elders pass wisdom quietly to those who will endure the long nights. The approach of Fimbulwinter becomes a shared experience of stillness, patience, and mindful preparation, teaching that the coming of endings, however vast, can be met with clarity and composure. The anticipation of Ragnarok is thus not only a tale of cosmic destruction, but also a meditation on perception, endurance, and the passage of time. The world, like its inhabitants, is a tapestry of cycles. Light and dark, warmth and cold, growth and decay. Each omen, each subtle shift in wind or shadow, carries meaning without urgency, offering opportunity for reflection. Even prophecy, foretelling immense upheaval, is imbued with calm awareness, a reminder that endings are as natural as beginnings, and that recognition of impermanence enhances rather than diminishes the dignity of life. From frost and shadow old oaths awaken. Can an ending be sacred? As Ragnarok begins, the world does not erupt in frantic chaos. Instead, it unfolds as the quiet culmination of cycles that have long been in motion. The realms tremble, not with panic, but with measured inevitability. The forces of frost, flame, and shadow move in rhythm with destiny, drawing gods, giants, and mortals alike into the final act of an ancient drama. Each confrontation is both ending and reflection, a sacred acknowledgement of the balance between creation and dissolution. Odin meets Fenrir, the wolf whose very being embodies the tension between order and wildness. The encounter is decisive, yet it is framed as the fulfillment of a pattern rather than a mere battle. Odin's wisdom, courage, and long pursuit of knowledge culminate here, his actions resonating with the calm recognition that fate is both inescapable and meaningful. The struggle reflects the inherent dignity of conscious choice, even when the outcome is foreordained, illustrating that heroism persists in awareness and courage, not in the avoidance of loss. Thor faces Jormungandr, the great serpent encircling the world. Their confrontation is immense, yet the narration emphasizes the solemn rhythm of the encounter over spectacle. Thor strikes with measured force, fulfilling his role in the cosmic order, while understanding the limits imposed by destiny. The serpent's thrashing, the clash of earth and water, and the quiet acceptance of finality imbue the scene with reflective gravitas. Here, victory and defeat coexist. The act itself embodies the sacredness of participation in the universal pattern. Meanwhile, Heimdall and Loki confront one another, their duel a mirror of the dualities that permeate all realms. Law and chaos, foresight and cunning, light and shadow. Each movement is deliberate, resonating with the quiet inevitability of ancient prophecy. Even in conflict, there is rhythm and reflection, revealing that endings can carry meaning beyond destruction. A harmonious conclusion to long-standing tensions, a gentle closure to cycles that have shaped existence for eons. Amid these divine fates, the worlds themselves respond. Midgard quakes, seas surge, and the sky burns with auroral light, yet the tone is meditative rather than frantic. These natural responses to the climactic events mirror the solemnity of human experience in the face of change. Impermanence acknowledged, loss observed, and continuity understood. The universe participates in closure as if breathing slowly, embracing both the quiet and the grandeur of transformation. Ragnarok, in this perspective, is not tragedy alone, but sacred rhythm. Each god fulfills a role, each act concludes a chapter in the cosmic narrative. Loss is met with reflection, and endings carry the dignity of inevitability. The wisdom of the Aesir and Vanir is demonstrated not in survival alone, but in composure, acceptance, and the acknowledgement that closure is as vital as creation. Through these events, the balance of all things is reaffirmed, echoing the cycles observed in mortal life: birth, growth, maturity, and the gentle yielding of time. Mortals, too, witness and internalize the echoes of this sacred closure. Stories of the gods' final acts are passed down with reverent calm, framing the inevitability of death and change as natural, meaningful, and intertwined with the fabric of life. Through these narratives, listeners understand that courage and wisdom manifest not in resisting the inevitable, but in embracing it with integrity, compassion, and reflection. And when the final flame dimmed, silence reclaimed the worlds. What if every ending is just a deeper beginning? From the quiet aftermath of Ragnarok, the world stirs slowly back to life. The scorched lands soften, streams return to gentle flow, and forests rise again in muted green, a testament to resilience and the continuity of nature. The cycles of destruction and renewal are woven into the very fabric of existence. What was lost becomes the foundation for what is to come. In this calm rebirth, the narrative shifts from tension to gentle restoration, allowing the listener to dwell in reflection on the permanence of change and the persistence of life. Amid this renewal, Lif and Lefracer, the two humans fated to survive, emerge quietly from their hidden shelter. Their presence symbolizes the enduring spirit of humanity, a soft echo of the divine pattern observed throughout the cosmos. They walk beneath a sky tempered by a softer sun, feeling the warmth of new light, the fragrance of regrowing forests, and the subtle rhythm of Earth awakening. Their steps mark not only survival but also the continuity of story, memory, and legacy, a bridge between past and future. The natural world mirrors this rebirth. Rivers, once choked with ice and fire, now flow with steady clarity, reflecting the calm sky. Animals return to forests and meadows, moving with the instinctive grace that restores balance. Every leaf, every blade of grass, seems imbued with the lessons of the past, reminders that life persists, adapts, and transforms in harmony with larger rhythms. Even the wind carries a sense of quiet deliberation, as if the earth itself breathes with awareness, honoring both what has ended and what is beginning anew. In the realms of myth, the gods' legacies linger in memory, ritual, and reflection. Though their battles have ended, the wisdom, courage, and balance they embodied continue to resonate. The world is quieter now, yet full of potential, echoing the same principles of observation, moral discernment, and harmony that guided both deities and mortals before the twilight. In this serene pause, the story emphasizes continuity rather than finality. Endings are not absolute, but preludes to renewal, carrying forward lessons of courage, reflection, and integrity. The reemergence of humanity underlines the central rhythm of Norse cosmology. Life, death, and rebirth are part of an eternal cycle. Lif and Lefracer cultivate the land, honor the memory of ancestors, and teach future generations to observe the patterns of seasons, fate, and moral choice. In doing so, they exemplify the quiet virtues celebrated throughout the myths: resilience, attentiveness, and the steady cultivation of character in harmony with nature. This rebirth invites reflection on the broader tapestry of existence. Just as the world renews itself from fire and frost, so too do lessons and values persist through time. Courage, honor, wisdom, and compassion are threads that survive beyond destruction, emerging again in human hearts and in the rhythms of the natural world. In this way, the cycle completes a cosmic circle, where every ending carries within it the seed of a new beginning. And so, life began again, gentler, wiser, eternal. What happens when gods become memories? As centuries pass, the voices of the Norse gods gradually recede from the lands where their myths once walked openly among men. Christian missionaries bring new teachings, and the old rituals, sacrifices, and festivals slowly transform under the influence of another faith. Yet this transition is not framed as violent conquest, but as a quiet evolution, a reshaping of belief, understanding, and cultural memory. The halls of the Aesir empty, the sacred groves grow still, and the once vivid songs of heroes and gods soften into echoes carried by the wind, the sea, and the memory of those who once believed. In villages and coastal towns, people navigate both change and continuity. The new faith introduces different rhythms of life and reflection, while elements of the old belief linger in folk practices, proverbs, and celebrations. Seasonal rites, reverence for nature, and respect for ancestry persist, often quietly blended with new teachings. The narrative emphasizes observation over conflict. The process of transformation is gentle, subtle, and full of reflection. The gods are not destroyed. They are woven into stories, poems, and sagas that preserve their wisdom, courage, and guidance for generations to come. The receding of the old faith also allows a broader perspective on memory and legacy. Temples and sacred sites may fall silent, but their symbolic resonance continues to shape human experience. Places where sacrifices once occurred become sites of contemplation. Ancient festivals evolve into folklore and seasonal markers. In these quiet adaptations, the essence of Norse cosmology endures. The attention to cycles, moral reflection, and the interconnectedness of life remains a guiding principle even as outward practices change. As Christianity spreads, chroniclers, skalds, and storytellers preserve fragments of older beliefs, embedding them in poems, sagas, and oral tradition. The tales of Odin's wisdom, Thor's courage, and Loki's paradoxical trickery live on in human imagination, providing continuity between past and present. In this way, the fading of active worship does not erase the gods. It transforms them into enduring symbols, teaching moral insight, reflection, and calm courage through memory rather than ritual. The transition also illustrates the adaptability of culture. Communities learn to honor both the old and the new, creating spaces where memory and transformation coexist. Rituals are altered, stories are retold with subtle shifts in meaning, and moral teachings are preserved through narrative rather than sacrifice. The calm tone frames this period as one of quiet resilience, showing that beliefs and values endure not only through practice but through remembrance, reflection, and story. Even in the silence of empty halls and dormant groves, the gods' influence persists in human hearts. Courage, wisdom, honor, and the reflection on fate continue to shape behavior, decisions, and moral understanding. Their presence becomes less literal, yet no less profound, offering guidance in moments of contemplation and moral choice. The legacy of Norse faith is carried forward not as doctrine alone, but as quiet inspiration, accessible in meditation, storytelling, and observation of the natural world. But even in silence, their stories endured. Can words keep the gods alive? Long after the old temples fell silent and sacred groves lay dormant, the skalds and poets of the north took up the task of preservation. In dimly lit halls, by flickering firelight, they recited the sagas of Odin, Thor, Freya, and Loki, weaving their deeds into verse that would endure far beyond mortal lifespans. The rhythm of their storytelling mirrored the cadence of life itself, slow, deliberate, reflective, allowing listeners to inhabit the worlds of gods and heroes with calm reverence. Each saga became a vessel of memory, carrying divine presence into the hearts of mortals. The poems, rich with metaphor and imagery, distilled complex cosmologies into narratives accessible to the human mind, yet suffused with awe and moral insight. Through careful word choice and measured repetition, skalds could evoke the grandeur of Asgard, the tension of fate, and the quiet courage of mortals who mirrored their deities. In this way, the gods remained alive, not in temples or rituals, but in consciousness, imagination, and reflection. The act of storytelling itself became a sacred ritual. Skalds observed their craft with care, understanding that each verse could preserve the essence of a god's wisdom or the moral resonance of a hero's courage. Words were chosen as offerings, precise, elegant, and imbued with respect. Even when audiences changed, these stories endured, passed from mouth to ear, from hearth to hall, ensuring that the moral and philosophical truths embedded within myth persisted through generations. Through verse, the cycles of Norse cosmology, creation, heroism, conflict, death, and renewal, were rendered tangible in human memory. Listeners absorbed lessons not through didactic instruction, but by inhabiting the worlds presented in poetic form. Odin's sacrifice, the courage of Sigurd and Beowulf, and the quiet endurance of humanity were mirrored in every stanza, encouraging reflection, empathy, and understanding. The poetry itself became a bridge, connecting mortal perception with divine archetypes in a calm, contemplative manner. The poets also preserved the subtlety and paradox inherent in the myths. Loki's mischief, the inevitability of Ragnarok, and the layered meanings of fate and honor were conveyed with nuance, allowing audiences to explore moral ambiguity without fear or judgment. This narrative sophistication ensured that the gods' complexity remained intact, and that their lessons could be appreciated as meditative reflections on existence, courage, and moral choice. Even as parchment replaced oral recitation, the sagas continued to hold power. Scholars and scribes, working quietly in monasteries or private chambers, copied texts with care, ensuring the survival of verses that would otherwise fade. Each transcription was an act of reverence, a conscious effort to maintain the continuity of cultural memory. In doing so, the poets and scribes transformed ephemeral human words into enduring vessels of divine presence, carrying forward the Norse worldview into eras that might otherwise have forgotten it. The calm endurance of these stories also mirrors the cyclical nature of the myths themselves. Just as the world is reborn after Ragnarok, so too do the tales revive the gods in each telling, each reading, and each quiet reflection. The acts of remembrance become their own form of sacred ritual, a testament to human creativity, memory, and the capacity to preserve meaning across time. The poetry allows listeners to meditate upon courage, wisdom, fate, and moral reflection long after the gods have receded from active worship. From parchment and song, 1,000 winters could not erase them. Why do we still dream of Valhalla? Even as centuries pass, the stories of the Norse gods and heroes find new life in human imagination. From the operas of Wagner, which cast mythic grandeur into soaring music, to the novels, films, and artistic interpretations of today, the myths resurface in forms both familiar and transformed. Yet the essence remains unchanged. The themes of courage, fate, honor, and cosmic balance continue to resonate, offering calm reflection and quiet wonder to those who engage with them. Modern retellings allow listeners and readers to wander again through Asgard's golden halls, Midgard's forests, and the quiet shadow of Hel. Odin's wisdom, Thor's strength, and Loki's paradoxical cunning are reimagined, yet their moral and philosophical core persists. The narratives remind us that stories are living entities, capable of renewal, adaptation, and continued relevance. Each retelling becomes a gentle meditation on human experience, echoing the patterns first observed in the myths. Cycles of struggle and resolution, the interplay of chaos and order, and the quiet persistence of virtue. Even as these stories enter literature, film, and art, they preserve their tranquil core. The retellings do not need to dramatize violence or upheaval to be compelling. They carry resonance through moral reflection, symbolic imagery, and measured pacing. The serene courage of heroes, the moral nuance of gods, and the inevitability of fate are conveyed in ways that invite calm contemplation, reminding audiences that myth is not only spectacle, but also meditation. The enduring presence of Norse mythology also reflects the human desire to connect with continuity. Despite technological change and shifting cultural landscapes, these tales offer a stable framework for exploring timeless questions. What does it mean to live with honor? How do we face mortality with courage? In what ways can wisdom guide action? Through the imagination, these questions continue to be explored, quietly linking modern listeners with ancient perspectives and bridging centuries through reflection and narrative. Artistic interpretations further enrich the dialogue between past and present. Illustrations, musical compositions, and creative retellings capture the atmosphere of myth. The chill of Yggdrasil's shadowed roots, the warmth of Valhalla's mead halls, the tension of Ragnarok's inevitability, allowing audiences to experience mythic landscapes as immersive spaces of contemplation. In this way, Norse myth is not confined to the past. It exists as a living, breathing lens through which humans can meditate on courage, fate, and the cycles of existence. Even popular adaptations, while simplified, carry traces of the myth's calm, reflective spirit. Modern audiences encounter Thor's measured strength, Loki's nuanced cunning, and Odin's pursuit of wisdom, not merely as action or entertainment, but as invitations to reflect upon personal courage, moral choice, and the rhythms of life. The stories endure precisely because they engage both the imagination and the contemplative mind, offering a quiet space for thought amidst the bustle of modern life. And in every retelling, the old voices whisper again, "What truth endures when gods fade and worlds renew?" The myths of the Norse people are more than stories. They are mirrors of existence itself, reflecting the rhythms of nature, the cycles of life, and the quiet patterns of human thought. Odin's search for wisdom, Thor's measured strength, the Norns' weaving of fate. Each narrative element embodies a meditation on impermanence, courage, and moral reflection. Through them, listeners are invited to consider the delicate balance between action and acceptance, strength and humility, mortality and enduring values. The Norse myths do not shy away from endings. Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods, illustrates that destruction and renewal are inseparable, that the dissolution of one order is the preparation for another. In this awareness, the myths encourage acceptance. Loss is natural, endings are meaningful, and each cycle carries within it the seed of future growth. By observing the gods' composure and the measured courage of heroes, humans learn to navigate their own challenges with steadiness, reflection, and integrity. These stories are also profound reflections on human experience. Heroes and gods alike face uncertainty, moral choice, and the inevitability of fate. The myths frame these struggles not as sources of panic or despair, but as opportunities for calm observation and thoughtful action. Courage is not merely physical. It is intellectual and moral. Honor is measured not by outward triumph alone, but by adherence to principle, attentiveness to community, and reflection on consequence. Through myth, these values are preserved across time, resonating with listeners in quiet, enduring ways. Nature itself is central to Norse imagination. The frost, the sea, the forests, and the vast sky are ever present, shaping both mortal and divine action. The environment is not backdrop, but participant, a teacher in rhythm, resilience, and adaptation. Seasonal cycles, the Fimbulwinter, and the regenerative forces after Ragnarok illustrate that humans and gods exist in dialogue with natural order, finding calm understanding in observation of its patterns. Through this lens, the myths teach patience, humility, and attunement to forces beyond oneself, while celebrating the small agency each being possesses within the greater web. The myths also invite reflection on memory and storytelling itself. Even as the old faith receded, as Christianity spread, and as centuries passed, the narratives endured. In poetry, saga, and modern imagination, they remind us that meaning is preserved not only through action, but through careful observation, recording, and retelling. Courage, wisdom, and moral reflection survive because they are repeated, reflected upon, and internalized by each generation. The endurance of myth demonstrates the human desire to understand, preserve, and engage with principles that outlast temporal circumstances. In essence, Norse mythology is a meditation on impermanence, courage, and moral harmony. It teaches that endings are natural, that cycles shape life and consciousness, and that reflection is as vital as action. The gods and heroes act as both archetypes and companions in contemplation, guiding listeners through calm engagement with existence, urging awareness of the balance between strength and wisdom, chaos and order, action and reflection. In the hush of night, those truths still breathe. Perhaps the gods never left. Perhaps they became the quiet within us. After the final echoes of myth and the long arc of history, there comes a stillness that is not emptiness, but the soft presence of understanding. The cycles of creation, heroism, conflict, and renewal have completed their rhythm, leaving space for reflection, for the gentle absorption of lessons whispered across generations. The world, both real and imagined, exhales, and in that calm breath lies the quiet wisdom of the Norse cosmos. The tumult of Ragnarok, the struggles of gods and heroes, and the fading of old faiths are absorbed into memory and imagination. Each story, each verse, and each reflection has distilled into a serene rhythm, the pulse of existence felt in quiet observation rather than frantic pursuit. Life continues, yet the awareness of impermanence, courage, and moral harmony shapes each act. In this lull, humans and nature alike find continuity, a reassurance that endings are not voids, but thresholds to renewed understanding. In this calm, the landscapes of myth feel close once more. The forests of Midgard sway gently in imagined wind, the rivers murmur under soft light, and the great halls of Asgard exist in memory and meditation. Even the distant echoes of the gods' actions resonate subtly, not as instruction, but as quiet companions to thought. The imagery of myth becomes a tool for reflection, offering solace, grounding, and insight into human nature and the rhythms of the world. The timeless values embedded in these stories endure in this stillness. Courage, wisdom, compassion, and the acceptance of fate remain, not as imperatives, but as gentle guides. The calm after the storm allows the listener to internalize these principles, to appreciate that the essence of heroism, divinity, and human reflection is found in persistence, measured thought, and the quiet cultivation of character. The narrative itself slows, mirroring the contemplative pace of night, inviting the mind to rest while absorbing enduring truths. This serenity also reflects continuity through change. Cultures rise and fall, beliefs evolve, and generations pass, yet the core insights remain. Norse mythology illustrates that even as forms fade, the ideas of balance, endurance, moral reflection, and harmony with nature persist, quietly influencing imagination, ethics, and perception. The calm is not stagnation. It is the space in which wisdom circulates freely, accessible to those who pause, listen, and reflect. In essence, the calm after the storm embodies both closure and perpetuity. It is the acknowledgement that cycles conclude, but their resonance remains. The myths, the heroes, the gods, and the moral patterns they illuminate continue within thought, memory, and imagination. They encourage reflection without urgency, insight without alarm, and a meditative understanding of life's impermanence and continuity. And so the tale rests, like frost upon stone. As the stars turn above the ancient north, what dreams remain to be told? Nightfall spreads gently across the lands once roamed by gods, heroes, and mortals. The auroras ripple softly, painting the sky in emerald and rose, a celestial echo of the worlds imagined in myth. The wind carries whispers through silent forests and over frozen fjords, as if the earth itself recalls the deeds of Odin, Thor, Freya, and Loki. In this quiet hour, the boundaries between story and reality seem to dissolve, leaving only the serene presence of memory, reflection, and timeless wonder. Beneath the northern sky, the cycles of creation, courage, conflict, and renewal rest in gentle balance. Midgard's forests sway under starlight, the rivers murmur along their ancient paths, and the remnants of human and divine endeavors blend into a calm continuum. The myths, preserved in poetry, memory, and imagination, are no longer only tales of distant gods. They are companions to thought, guiding the mind through reflection on impermanence, honor, and moral clarity. The auroras themselves seem to breathe with the rhythm of myth, shimmering above as if recalling the slow unfolding of Yggdrasil's branches, the measured steps of heroes, and the subtle patterns of fate woven by the Norns. Every light and shadow becomes a meditation, a quiet invitation to observe, to ponder, and to feel the resonance of courage, wisdom, and moral reflection embedded in the stories of the North. There is no urgency here, only the calm continuation of cosmic rhythm, a reflection of the enduring human connection to imagination and memory. As listeners, we find solace in this serenity. The deeds of gods and mortals alike become mirrors for introspection, illustrating that courage, wisdom, and integrity are timeless companions in the quiet of night. Even the endings of sagas, the fading of old faiths, the silence after Ragnarok, are infused with gentle continuity, reminding us that stories, like stars, endure beyond the span of mortal perception. The sky above, painted with light and shadow, becomes both canvas and teacher, offering perspective, calm, and reflection. The cold northern wind, carrying the scent of pine, snow, and distant seas, seems to harmonize with the lingering echoes of myth. Each gust whispers of cycles completed and cycles renewed, of endings that are beginnings, and of memory that outlasts time. The landscapes of Midgard and Asgard, of Hel and Jotunheim, exist now in quiet thought, internalized, imagined, and felt, offering a meditative space for reflection on life, courage, and the beauty of impermanence. In this tranquil farewell, we recognize the enduring presence of Norse mythology. Its gods, heroes, and moral patterns continue to shape imagination and thought, providing companions for reflection beneath starlit skies. The stories do not end with the passing of ages. They persist as quiet rhythms in memory and imagination, accessible whenever one pauses to listen, reflect, or dream. And thus, beneath the whispering sky, the story of the Norse gods drifts once more into timeless sleep.